Blog Talk Radio.
Breaking news in this Sunday afternoon, five-time NBA champion, former league MVP Kobe Bryant died earlier this afternoon in Los Angeles in a helicopter crash. News reports are just coming in among multiple victims, Kobe Bryant on that helicopter. We're going to have Ramona Shelburne join us now from Los Angeles. She is on her way to the scene right now. Ramona, how did you first learn this information and how are you absorbing it right now?
Oh, my God. I mean, I was outside playing with my son, and I just saw an alert. And everyone I called, you know, you get quick voicemails, and people close to him are in absolute shock right now. And it's, you know, I can't even process it. I live 10 minutes away from the scene, guys, and I can't even remember how to drive there. It's shocking that Kobe Bryant is gone.
Ramona, he was a father, a husband, an NBA legend, an Academy Award winner, an icon. He did it all in his 41 years. He became an Angelino, even though he wasn't born and raised there. 20 years with the Lakers will make you that. You grew up in the area. In any way, shape, or form here, can you help explain what Kobe meant, not just to the Lakers, but to the entire Southern California community?
Oh, man. I mean, you know, when Kobe was about to retire, you know, I covered him his whole career here in Los Angeles, and everybody was writing retirement stories, right? Everybody was writing, you know, what he meant, putting his career in perspective, and because, you know, he was drafted here as a teenager, right? I mean, I was in high school when he took Brandy to the prom, okay? So we watched this kid grow up and become a man. He had his ups and downs. He had his he had his glories. You saw him go from boy to man to old man, right? And I remember saying to him, like, you know, we gotta do a story at the end here. We gotta put this all into perspective. And he really wasn't interested at first because he said, you know, everything has been written about me that could be written. I mean, everybody said everything negative, everything positive. What is there left to say? And I said, okay, so what is there left to say? And he said, you know, the only thing I'm interested in is leaving a legacy of telling people how I did it, the parts of me that had to rise to the occasion, how I climbed to this level, how I became the man I am. And when people talk about, like, the Mamba mentality, that's not just about Kobe. Like, People in China know what that is. People in Japan know what that is. People in Africa know what that is. He became a legend. And in a lot of ways, he was writing that legendary story the whole time he was playing. And I think, one of the things that always struck me is Kobe always said, I wrote all my own commercials. I mean, he knew what he was. He knew he was a symbol. He knew he was a legend. He knew what he had to leave to the next generation. And we sat together to do one final story, and it was like a 4-hour interview, guys. And I pushed him on everything to the point where it was uncomfortable, right? And I kept thinking maybe he would get up from this interview, but he liked it. It was almost like we were playing one-on-one, because I think somebody who's lived a life like Kobe, they've thought about all of this, man. He was so self-aware. He was so aware of his own legendary status. And I think he knew that life isn't always perfect, right? That you have to dig down into the depths of your soul sometimes to get through things, to push through things. And even when I would ask him about Colorado, even when I would ask him about the relationship with his parents, he answered. He went there, and it was because he had gone there. And I think he knew that, he had lived a remarkable life, and other people aspire to that. But if you really want to have a life like that, you have to be willing to do all of it, to go through all of it. I can't process the idea that he's gone right now. I really can't. I mean, this guy, he seemed like a legend, right? But in a way, man, it's a remarkable life that he led, right? I mean, he's 41, 42 at this point. Like, I can't imagine Los Angeles without him. He's like the mayor of Los Angeles, whatever you want to call it, and and nothing political, but almost like this spiritual mayor, right? And the city just feels different without him here.
Ramona, that's a good point. You touched on so many aspects of Kobe's life. Of course, you had the situation in Eagle, Colorado, didn't have the best relationship with his family, parents, on again, off again. But in so many ways, he represented Los Angeles in terms of an identity. Yeah, he was Hollywood, but he was also hardworking too. So he could kick it in Beverly Hills, but he could be down in Downey with the fellas as well. The loss that this city will feel with Kobe passing away on this afternoon, how would you sum that up?
I mean, honestly, I think the city's in shock right now. Everyone I've talked to is sending texts saying, like, please tell me this isn't true. Like, nobody can believe this. How could this just happen? And, I think he was on his way to the Mamba Academy in Thousand Oaks. I mean, talk about a guy who's focused, this is what his legend was. Like, he was going to train a new generation of kids, teach them how to be like him. He flies a helicopter because he always flew in a helicopter, guys. Like, he lived in Orange County, and instead of saying, I'm going to be in traffic every day going to Staples Center, he took a helicopter. That was part of Kobe, It was just like he did other legendary things as he was living. And, when I remember one of my favorite Kobe stories is he wanted to do something romantic for his wife, and he wanted to prove to her how much he loved her. They were in obviously a really tough time. It was after everything that happened in Colorado, and that he wanted to keep her and stay together. And so he decided he wanted to teach her. He wanted to teach himself how to play piano and play her a song. And I was like, why don't you just get someone to teach you to play piano? And he said, no, it meant more if I taught myself. So he put on Moonlight Sonata and just taught himself how to play that by ear so he could play it for his wife. I mean, who does that? People like Kobe.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.
Today, I was talking about the generations that Kobe has inspired as his career and life evolved. You are clearly a member of that younger generation who looked up to someone like Kobe as an idol when it came to basketball. How are you absorbing what is happening right now?
It's been extremely difficult. I'm currently in Los Angeles. I live downtown, about 6 blocks from Staples Center. And I was just out and about, going about my daily business. And that's when the news broke. I looked at my phone and heard about it. And it's just been extremely tough because as I was crossing through the LA Live Plaza, as you see the shots there, it was not nearly as many people. People forget the Grammys are going on right now. There were people in gowns, there was energy, there was buzz downtown. And then all of a sudden, it seemed like everything went quiet. There started to be more jerseys, Kobe Bryant jerseys, obviously. People just wanted to be together downtown here, and just seeing how everyone is rallying and holding each other and embracing. I watched someone already show artwork, and there was also a flower bouquet already being, presented and erected right in front of Staples. It just is unreal how quickly this has all come together. Just processing this news. And I think in times like this is when, everyone unites. And so me personally being a part of the women's basketball community, this is just extremely personal for us as well. I know we talk a lot about his NBA credentials, but he was very much present at WNBA games. Saw him at WNBA All-Star. I'm a member of the Los Angeles Sparks, and he's had a tremendous relationship with our organization, so much so that my head coach, Derek Fisher, always tells us stories about how to be a champion each and every day based on going up against Kobe in practice. I even remember we saw Kobe. Kobe called us into his private room with his daughters. At the U.S. Women's National Team training competition that we were able to witness and attend, and he spent the entire halftime plus and then some, about like 30 minutes, talking to us about how to understand Coach Fisher and how to compete at the highest level, and it really helped us as players. He was always giving back, and to me, I think everyone feels it. Just being downtown, it's surreal to see how few people were there when the news broke, and how quickly everyone has come together. And I mean, I even heard applause when they showed, his picture on the big screen, right, by Wolfgang Puck. Like, this is just, it's very difficult to process, but at the same time, I think everyone is leaning on each other, especially downtown here in Los Angeles.
Yeah, so many emotions right now, Shanae. Sadness, but also appreciation for what he represented to so many people in whatever regard that might be. Stand by, Shanae. I do want to share a little more perspective here from President Barack Obama, the 44th President of the United States. He went to Twitter moments ago and shared the following, quote, "Kobe was a legend on the court and just getting started in what would have been just as meaningful a second act. To lose Gianna is even more heartbreaking to us as parents. Michelle and I send love and prayers to Vanessa and the entire Bryant family on an unthinkable day." And that is something that's also so hard for people to absorb, Shanae. I mean, we all experience death in our lives from a personal standpoint, friends, family, relatives, coworkers, what have you. But when young children die as well, and especially in this particular case, Gianna, who was 13 years old, she goes by Gigi, a budding basketball star in her own right in the junior level, and they were on their way to a game that Kobe was going to coach her in. And you mentioned the WNBA games, how many times he brought her courtside to see the Sparks play or to go and see the University of Oregon women's teams play. The influence that he was having on a young generation of basketball players of both genders, Shanae, and now you're going to have to absorb that tragedy of Gianna not being able to reach her potential in the sport.
Everyone is hurting, and this news came in waves. Obviously, first Kobe Bryant and then his daughter. And I don't even know if I should be saying this, but our team, our Sparks, were, thinking about potentially practicing this year at Mamba Academy. And that's how committed he is to finding role models that support, women's basketball for his daughter. He did it for the love of his children. It just, to me, is hard to process in general, especially when it comes to her, too. When you think about the impact he's had on the game, it's not just what he did himself, but it's also, as you mentioned, for the future generations. Everyone in my generation tends to think that, LeBron/Kobe are the greatest of all time because he epitomized basketball dominance in the era in which we were born and raised. So especially for the women's basketball community, we understand this as well. I was even supposed to be 2 weeks ago invited to a private WNBA workout session with Kobe. I know there were a number of other WNBA players involved in that session. I believe Liz Cambage, Kayla McBride, about 10 or so players that came. And he didn't do this for the notoriety. He didn't do this, just to get attention, because a lot of times women's basketball players tend to fight for that, fight for our positioning. But he saw us, he respected us, and those are the things that he would do out of the love of the game, whether he was competing in his prime or afterward. He just cared. He cared, and I think it all stemmed from his daughter's love. And one of my favorite things that he said, a lot of people were saying, hey, don't you want a son? And he said, why do I need a son? I've got a daughter that can carry on my legacy. So totally heartbroken, especially, for the future generation. We knew her to be the rising star, the one that would carry the torch, the one that would rep his name on the back of the jersey. We were excited for that, and it's just tough for that to be gone way too soon.
I don't know. I just don't have a lot to say. The news is just devastating to everybody who knew him, known him a long time, and he means a lot to me. Obviously, he was such a great opponent. It's what you want in sports. He had that DNA that very few athletes can ever have. The Tiger Woods and the Michael Jordans. It's funny. I was getting to know him more since he retired. This is a tough one. I don't. We have to go play. The news is just so devastating for Vanessa and his family, and there's just so many people he touched, and it's looking at my young players and seeing how emotional they are. They didn't even know him, and it just tells you how far his reach was. So, this is just shocking news for all of us, and sorry, I don't have a lot to say. I just can't. I have to go talk to a team before a game and tell them to play a game.
What was your last interaction with Kobe like?
That was great. We were at a function 3 or 4 weeks ago, and we sat and talked for probably 45 minutes. We always like to reminisce. We would always laugh at our versions of our losses. When we beat them in 2008, he had his version, and when they beat us in 2010, I had my version, and we would laugh at how different we looked at the games. This is a great loss for the league, and I thought he had so much more left to do, and he was starting to do it. Never seen him happier. So I don't know.
Do you feel blessed that you were able to?
Yeah, I'm lucky that I was part. I'm lucky that I got to coach and compete, against him, and and I feel for so many people. It's obviously his family. I can't imagine. Lou played with him. Ty Lue played with him. Cliff coached with him. Kawhi was very, very close with him, and so was Paul George. And he meant a lot of good for our league, and especially the competitive part of our league. So, sometimes things don't make sense, and there's times you should feel, you just feel sad, and this is one of them, and you have to get through it. We all will, We all have to be strong. We laughed and joked about the mama mentality. We all going to need it right now. And there's nobody. I think everybody right now is a Laker fan. We're all Lakers today. You feel for that community, for Jeannie and everyone else. I think people think because you compete against people sometimes that you don't have a relationship with them and you don't like, and it's probably the exact opposite. I think sometimes the more you compete, the more respect you have for the opponent. I would say that's the way I felt with Kobe, and so that's all. I just don't have a lot to say.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For highlights and analysis, check out the ESPN app, and for live streaming and premium content, check out ESPN+.
Jay, what did he mean to Los Angeles? Coming there as a teenager when the franchise was going through a transition from the Magic Johnson era, trying to get back to the upper echelon. Shaq comes in, but it wasn't until those two guys got together that they were able to win championships. What did he mean to that city in terms of that team?
I mean, they really took to him, and I mean, the passion of Kobe fans. He was the Los Angeles athlete for this century, right? Really, since the year 2000, he has been the predominant Los Angeles athlete, and there have been so many greats that have come through that city over the years and represented that city. Sandy Koufax and Magic Johnson, and on and on. Fernando Valenzuela. But Kobe really, over the last 20 years, has been the person that represented L.A. and, I think loved the fans as much as they loved him, and they would be willing to do everything. We've seen how many Twitter battles have been fought on Kobe's behalf over the years. I think he was amused by the passion, but what forged that is L.A. fans have always appreciated hard work, and, it's known as a glitzy, showcase town, but fans have always valued hard work. And so not only was Kobe did he have that flair for the dramatic, and was he a very exciting player, but he was a dedicated player, a hardworking player. And so that's what really resonated with the L.A. fans.
J.A., the crash happened shortly after 10 a.m. local time in Calabasas. We did report, so did the Los Angeles Times, that the crash ignited a brush fire, and that made it difficult for emergency personnel to get to the helicopter that had Kobe Bryant and the others on board. You mentioned you covered 90% of his playoff games, his biggest games, biggest stages, biggest players, biggest moments. Simply put, what made Kobe, Kobe?
The drive, the determination, the absolute lack of fear, including the fear of failure. He had no fear of failure, willing to take the shot, willing to live with the consequences if he missed, but absolutely determined to go down shooting. Stubborn even, sometimes to a fault, but ultimately, sometimes your greatest qualities are your worst qualities. And in that case, everything that made him great, that stubborn quality, that refusal to lose. I think of a game that they did lose, right? When Robert Horry, the one time Robert Horry missed the shot, the one time that stands out of Robert Horry missing his shot in San Antonio, 2003 playoffs, and they were down, the game was over, and Kobe just refused and kept on scoring points and kept on driving, kept on pushing, and brought them to the point where it could even come down to a single shot. And that was a great example, even though we think of him as a winner, five championships and all that, but he never showed me more than in that fourth quarter in a game that they wound up losing. But he gave them a chance to win.
Interesting. 5-time champion, 18-time All-Star. I want to mention this with you because I know in your ESPN career and post you deal with social media, journalism, all the fans out there. We tried to ask this question to Woj, but I want to see if I can get an answer from you. As of 10 p.m. Eastern time last night in the 10 p.m. Eastern hour, he was tweeting, active on social media, congratulating LeBron James surpassing him on the all-time scoring list last night in Philadelphia, wearing a Lakers uniform, Kobe's hometown, Kobe's team. What do you make of the suddenness of it all, that here we are, everybody's just on social media weighing in, it's another Saturday night in the NBA, Kobe at the forefront of it, congratulating the king, and Sunday morning this?
The reminder that it can go away so quickly, and Kobe had never been more prominent this season, right, than last night, as LeBron is passing him on the all-time scoring list. So it's strange it's even stranger because he had been so fresh in our minds. You know, we don't maybe think about him every single day this NBA season as he's gone on living his life. You know, but again, LeBron had just brought him back. You know, the NBA has been blessed in that so many of its legends are still around. You know, when they gathered the 50 greatest players from the first half century of the league in 1997 during All-Star Weekend, then I think Pete Maravich was the only one who was not alive on that list. And, you know, continuing on, we've lost a few over the years, and of course losing David Stern at the start of this year. But, you know, so many of the NBA greats are still around. The fact that Bill Russell can present the trophy with his name on it to the Finals MVP, that's a special, unique thing to this league. It's old enough to have legends, but it's still young enough that the biggest names can still be around. And to now lose one of the biggest names in the sport's history at such a young age, so prematurely, is just a tremendous blow to the collective conscience of the league. Kobe was unique in that he was a guy who had great perspective, you know, someone who had played against Michael Jordan, came into the league when Charles Barkley and Patrick Ewings and that era, you know, played against them, and then had been around long enough to play against LeBron and all the current generation. You know, so he was a bridge, and his appreciation and his knowledge of the guys that he came up watching and the people even before that. It was interesting as he came up, you know, was rising through the all-time scoring list, and he passed the likes of an Oscar Robertson or something. He would always have something to say about them, describe the way that they played, and guys who played long before he was born. And so I asked him one time, like, how did you learn about these guys? And he said his grandfather had sent him a tape when he was living in Italy, when his family was over there as his father was playing in Italy, and his grandfather sent him a tape called, you know, VHS tape called Golden Greats of Basketball, and he would just watch it and study, and that's how he learned about the greats that came long before him. But he was such an appreciative historian of the game, you know, took his place in the game seriously, was able to speak about it. It's not easy to speak about greatness and your place in the league, and I thought he really developed the ability to speak honestly and with clarity just about where he was and how that compared to the other all-time greats. He came in really trying to adopt and follow in the path of Michael Jordan, and I think he came to resent that a little bit as he got older, and he wanted his own identity. But he could still speak to Michael Jordan and describe him in a way that very few could, because I really believe he was the closest thing that we had seen to Michael out there.
It's well said. He spoke honestly of greatness because Kobe personified greatness. It takes one to know one.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.
I'm told that we have another tweet that we want to show. As tributes have been pouring in, we've of course been monitoring social media. Oh, I'm told it's a shot. Let's go ahead and listen to that reaction now from Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
It's very difficult for me to put in words how I feel about the loss of Kobe Bryant. As a young boy, I met him when he was 11 or 12 years old. I was friends with his dad, Joe. We were former adversaries. Joe played for the 76ers, but he was a good friend and someone that I shared a friendship. And it's hard for me to understand now how this is affecting Joe and his wife. So to Kobe's family, I want to send my most sincere and heartfelt regrets and prayers, and my thoughts are with you guys. Kobe was an incredible family man. He loved his wife and daughters. He was an incredible athlete and a leader in a lot of ways. He inspired a whole generation of young athletes. He was one of the first ones to leave high school and come into the NBA and do so well, dominating the game and becoming one of the best scorers that the Los Angeles Lakers has ever seen. I had the privilege of being there when he scored his 81-point game, and it was something that I will always remember as one of the highlights of the things that I have learned and observed in sports. Kobe, my thoughts are with you. Absolutely. Rest in peace, young man. This loss it's just hard to comprehend. Go with God.
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar reacting to the news of Kobe Bryant's death. Bill, you're still with us. I want to ask about the outpouring of support that we're seeing, that we're beginning to see for the family of Kobe Bryant, for his wife and his other daughters. Can you talk a little bit about that kind of support, which I imagine will be a flood here in the next few days?
Yes, I mean, it's going to, I think, Elaine, be, a complicated reality for this family because they are going to have a level of support, of love, of well wishes, of kindnesses from Los Angeles and beyond given their way, thrown their way, while I would imagine also having to deal with the desire for the privacy they're going to need to mourn, a father and a husband and a second oldest daughter, and just, as a parent, and as awful as the Kobe Bryant story is, and 41 is so young, as President Obama noted in the tweet that you read, and just, as other folks have said, the reality that it is Kobe Bryant and it is, the daughter of Kobe and Vanessa is, that is a difficulty that I can't and wouldn't want to have to comprehend as a parent. And while Los Angeles, and beyond Los Angeles, there's going to be so much love and support sent their way, there's also going to be, I'm sure, a balance that has to be struck as for a family that will be in the spotlight in a way they never have been, on a level, in terms of the mourning and sadness that they never have been, that's going to want some privacy.
And good evening and welcome to a special edition of the Batchelor News radio show. I want to thank you all joining us this evening here on blogtalkradio.com. And, of course, we simulcast on WCOM FM in the Chapel Hill area on Mondays. I'm L.A. Batchelor, and it's always nice to get, I call it the homeboys together. It always seems that I get the homeboys together under the most tragic circumstances, and this is one of those. Certainly, Kobe Bryant, 41 years young. If you haven't heard, I'm sure everybody on the planet has, but if you haven't, died in a helicopter crash with his daughter, his 13-year-old daughter, his second to oldest daughter, on their way to a basketball camp or practice, if you will, with others on there, died instantly in a helicopter crash right outside of Los Angeles. And we mourn. I don't like to use terms, thoughts and prayers, because politicians have hijacked that, but we definitely mourn and pray, as I have, and I do, can't speak for everybody. Vanessa, his wife, his family, Jelly Bean, his father, and Pam, his mother, and those beautiful babies that are left behind after this tragedy. And I want to make sure I emphasize, not just now, but throughout the show, that there were 7 other people, including the pilot, that we know of, according to the manifest, that perished as well. So, as I did, prayers go out to all families. There was a baseball coach up there that I know Tony is familiar with. It died in this crash, and parents and kids. So this is really hard to discuss, but like your family member in this particular case, and I'll get into some detail. Like Kobe or not, on the court or not, this is tragic. He was 41 years young, and everybody on this broadcast that's on the line right now are at least older than that. I'm pretty sure. Even Orlando's a younger guy, but I'm sure he's older than 41 or right about that, and so is Andrew. So I'm going to introduce everybody and get thoughts, but I just wanted to set that up. I also want to let people know that you can call in and share comments and questions here on 646-929-0130 or on Blog Talk, certainly on Pad Nation on Facebook, Pad Nation 2 on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, wherever you want to share and however you want to share, you can definitely do that this evening for the next hour and a half or so. I also want to mention that, this, for me, in talking with the crew and putting this out there last night, I don't want this to be a bashing night. I want it to be, positive. Let the dead rest, right? We can do all the he said, she said, why did he go out in the plane, in the helicopter, and is he this or whatever, all of that. We'll get into comparisons, and that's fine. But I don't want to do the negative. I really don't want to go too negative. I just want it to be about how great this man was, and by all accounts, a family man. And everybody on this broadcast, if not a parent, certainly is an uncle or a mentor to a child. And so understand it. And not only that, all of us, and I can speak for Tony in particular, he and I go way back, we've lost people close to us, parents and otherwise. So, this is not something that, I don't want to do the thoughts and prayers thing. I don't want to do all that. I played some excerpts. Certainly you heard from the greatest center in terms of no one could ever block a shot, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. You heard from Jay Adonde, who I respect. Doc Rivers took it really hard and continues to take it hard. And you heard from the WNBA community, which in Kobe's after basketball life was really pushing forward, and not only WNBA, but women's rights and women's sports rights in general, equal rights. So it's a lot to touch on. I talk too much. I got a cold, so please bear with me. But I want to bring in who I have on the phone and many more people to be joining us as the hour goes on. I mentioned Orlando Hughes. He is the voice and one of the best play-by-play guys I know of KRSB Radio. We hope to be doing something in the next month or so. I'll talk with him off air. In Philadelphia, a place where Kobe grew up, spent time with outside the suburbs of Philly, if you will, and Orlando can get into specifics with that. But he is Orlando Hughes. Tony T-Mac McClean, I mentioned earlier, one of my longest and best friends and colleagues, and grew up together, and the best editor I know from Black Athlete Sports Network here on the line. And Andrew Dixon, who is always a pleasure to get his insight. We have him on mainly and mostly during soccer seasons, the World Cups, and some of the intermediate soccer championships and tournaments that take place. But he definitely, trust me, folks, definitely knows basketball. In Miami now, I wanted to touch on. I'll ask him about Dwayne Wade and his response to some of those guys, and Shaq, that whole thing, because there was a lot that Kobe did and a lot Kobe wanted to do post Shaq, and of course he got to see Shaq up and close in Miami for years when they won with Wade. And Shaq got a title there. So let's go around the horn, guys. I appreciate your patience. I wanted to lay the groundwork out because I know you guys got a lot. I want to go to Tony first, and here's why. We're going to get into what you thought about Kobe, guys, his legacy, what he meant in terms of you saw. We all got a chance. We're old enough to see him play, obviously, the 20 years that he played. So we have perspectives on that. But Tony, I want to put this in a perspective of the tragedy, because I've heard a lot about how devastating, not the family stuff we already know. I mean, God bless. I can't even imagine losing a child, and that's the part that I cried about. To be totally honest about. I mean, sure, Kobe's dead, but he's going down in a helicopter, trying, I'm sure, to assure his daughter that it's going to be okay somehow. I talk to my kids about that. I can't imagine burying my own. But with that being said, T, I've heard some people talk about, Kobe in terms of his impact, who he was in the sports world, how he transcended that the death of him and how tragic it was, that this is the greatest loss in terms of a sports figure. Now, our black athletes and black people, we say a lot. We don't lord up our guys a lot. Like we're not jumping off bridges, and I'm not saying that Europeans do it either, but I'm just saying we don't lord them up. But this is tragic. So how deep is that? In particular, I heard somebody mention, and Mike Bream, who we all know, mentioned this is like Thurman Munson for the Yankees in the crash, or Roberto Clemente when he died, and the impact that he had with his people and the game, and going beyond the game. He was going to help his people in Puerto Rico when he died. And so how big is this in terms of the impact of the NBA, of sports, and of beyond sports? Is it bigger than Thurman Munson, bigger than Ali dying? Ali didn't die tragically. I mean, he was sick. But where does this stand for you, if you will?
Well, if you're a basketball fan, you are hurting right now. You're hurting. You're hurting badly because this is, and again, whether you're a Laker fan, a Celtic fan, a Knicks fan, a Sixer fan, a Blazers fan, a Thunder fan, or what have you, this is, this is one of your icons. I mean, we're less than a week removed from seeing another icon ascend to the Hall of Fame in Derek Jeter, and their careers paralleled each other. Jeter played, Jeter's first full season with the Yankees was in '96, which was, I believe, the same year Kobe got drafted by, which is unfathomable to say, by the Hornets, who then traded him to the Lakers. But I think you'd have to put it in those same, and Rocky Marciano as well. Rocky Marciano was killed in a plane crash very young, as well. The thing is, he was only about 5 or 6 years removed. He was going, I don't know if you've heard, the Hall of Fame has already said he will be, he's posthumously been put into this year's class. He was going to be in this year's class, unless there was something incredibly stupid that was going to happen. He was going to he was going to be in Springfield this year. I think two things that came right to mind. The whole thing with the family, because one of his last interviews about a week or so ago, he made the statement that, and he's been a very big advocate, as you said, for the WNBA, and one of the reasons why he was grooming his daughter, he was hoping that, I think eventually that she would be able to play in the WNBA. And I think he mentioned that she was wanting to go to UConn and then get into the WNBA. So they were already thinking about that already. There are pictures of him with the UConn sweatshirt and all that, and a lot of pictures and what have you. In one of his last interviews, he basically said there are 3 women in the WNBA right now that can play in the NBA. He said there was Maya Moore, Deladon, and Diana Taurasi. And he was a huge advocate for the WNBA. And it's very interesting, and I want to say this because I don't think it's negative, but I think it has to be said. The elephant in the room with him for a lot of folks was the rape charge back in the day. And we all know how it played out and everything else. But in that same vein, you look at, what he became after his career was over, and later on when he, started to become, sort of like a mentor and what have you. And I think his relationship with his daughters is a constant reminder of what because I'm sure she knows about this. He's as much of an icon as he is, you can't live in a fishbowl. His life has been out there, and I'm sure he has sat down and has said what he did and what happened and everything to that effect. And not to get too deep, but I think it needs to be said, for many women, the first interactions that they have with men are with their father, and the fact that he was he was flawed, and I don't say that to bash him. I don't say that to whatever. It is whatever. But I think the fact that he, in a sense, saw the error in his ways, and I think he tried to cultivate that mistake. I was watching earlier today, Sam Mitchell, the former head coach and longtime NBA player, said there's a line from one of Donnie McClurkin's songs where it says, a saint is just a sinner who got back up.
Yeah, we fall down. Exactly.
Yeah. And I think in many ways that's what Kobe had become, say, like the last, say, 3-4 years of his career and the early stages of his career after he played. Because Kobe went out kicking and scratching. Kobe didn't want to. Kobe was one of them guys that, he was going to play, till he got down to the white meat, in a sense. But once he embraced retiring, he took it like he took his career. He engulfed it. You saw with his production company winning an Oscar a couple of years ago. Right. You see he still has relationships over in Italy from within the league. I was really glad that he more than embraced LeBron when he got there. And I think, and you've got to know that after Saturday night, he passes, Kobe in the scoring.
Mm-hmm.
And then has to wake up the next morning and find out he's gone. That there's needless to say, there are a lot of people hurting today. Needless to say, the family. The family. It goes without saying. I don't know if you've heard. They have already they've canceled tomorrow night's Laker Clipper game. The league has in deference to what I guess they figure they don't want to have them come right back on the court so soon. And I think it probably makes sense to do that. They will reschedule it. But I'm making sure that I hope that other folks. But depending on what side of the basketball spectrum you're on here, you're hurting. There are kids, there are kids, probably George kids' age and a little bit older. They grew up watching Kobe. They grew up watching him play, and now he's gone.
Right.
And that's a tough thing to and even though again, it's he's not right there where you could see, he was still there, and the fact that he's gone, it's devastating for him.
Yeah, and the Orlando, players that are young, say in their 20s or whatever, Kobe's Michael. Kobe's their Michael. And we get in comparison stuff down, a little bit later. But what did Kobe transcend the game of basketball? Like mentioned, I know he had a lot to do with China. I think, obviously David Stern got things going, and he passed away. But did Kobe transcend? And talk about that Philly connection. I mean, a lot of people. The one thing I heard about Kobe that he didn't get sort of the street cred, even though he in high school took Brandy to the prom, and Brandy's a famous singer as well. But he grew up in Italy. He speaks multiple languages. Jelly Bean had him in Italy, most of his beginning of his life. And then, of course, he grew up at the school there outside of Philly. But his detractors, I should say, and those who feel like, oh, he ain't really from Philly, didn't see him that way. And I thought that was part of a lot, along with a lot of other things, that drove him to be one of the top 5 players, in my opinion, in the history of the NBA.
Well, good evening to everybody. So, listen, I'll say this part. The city of Philadelphia is mourning the loss of one of its sons. Kobe was born here. He went to Italy. He came back. He went to high school here. He's from here. He's from this area. So whether it be Jameer Nelson from Chester, not necessarily from the city, but he's from this area. So he's here. He's one of us. I mean, this kind of affects me on multiple levels because, one, 13-year-old daughter. I have a 13-year-old daughter.
Thank
two,
you. I got a 13-year-old son, but go ahead.
Yeah.
Yep.
I know his mom. I know his sister. His sister's married to Charles Way. All this, like the connections, where he grew up at. I know people that went to school with him, although he's several years younger than I. Like this is, we used to go to the same barbershop in West Philly, and I remember following his life because that's when I was in college, and you knew who he was. And then his start of his NBA career. So, I mean, he's an LA Laker, true and true. Don't ever get it wrong, but he's a Philly point guard. And then sadly enough, and it was talked about today and yesterday, like, we lost one of our sons, which is kind of hard. And you had a lot of people on that, 9 people on that aircraft yesterday. Lives were impacted. Their families' lives were impacted drastically. Second thing, I want to say this part, LA, and then from my flying background. For those jokers who don't fly, don't have a pilot's license, don't know ish about flying, don't say he had no business being up there. He had a veteran pilot. They had flown many a times. They were on the special VFR flight rules, which means, visual flight rules. The visibility was 2.5 miles. It was not less than a mile, which made it dangerous. Something happened. I don't know what happened, but that pilot, his last transmission, he accepted a transition. Something happened to that airplane. I'll say that on the record, and this is Orlando quoting it, not Elaine, not Tony Mac, T-Mac. This is Orlando saying that. All right, something happened to that aircraft. So I have my theory in that part. But I mean, he is, and another thing, LA, TMZ. Can we do something about TMZ? Because they reported that it was Kobe Bryant on that aircraft, and his family was not in that LA area, and his wife had to get calls, and his sister's getting text messages from people, and they couldn't even verify if he was really on that airplane yet. And that information was leaked out. So I say to you, TMZ, to hell with you. Like, it's not important that you get the information out there that he crashed, but make sure you get everything verified, because there was a family that lost the mom, the dad, and the older sister. There's a guy with 2 kids, and his wife was killed. There's a pilot that had a family. There's another lady who had a family. And my daughter had asked, it's like, well, why aren't we talking about the other people? So it hurts.
Yeah.
It hurts. He's someone that dedicated his life to his craft, and then he did what a lot of black fathers do, and that's dedicate themselves to their children, and they work for their
That's
children.
right. That's right.
And the reason he had a helicopter because he understood how important time was. He wanted to spend every moment with his family. So it's easier for them to transition from Orange County down to the LA area via helicopter because it saves him time. So just imagine this, gentlemen, on the phone. The last 90 seconds of a person that's a complete control freak with time, and he's struggling knowing that his life and his daughter's life is going to come to an abrupt ending. Like, that's the part I can't get out of my head. Because something happened on a helicopter, and when that helicopter started to go, it was nothing that he could do. And it's so weird how the universe works. And he dedicated his life to the NBA. He dedicated his life to his children, and he has so much more, but it was gone. And I need people to understand, and I come from this from a personal perspective, your life can change in an instant. In an instant. You can go to bed tonight, wake up tomorrow, and something could happen to you that you will be completely different. I know that for a fact. So people have to stop. I'll be nice, LA. They have to stop BSing their time and other people's time and respect people's time. If you're saying, if you say to someone that you're going to do something, do it. If you tell someone you're going to be somewhere, do it. If you have an idea or something that you want to do, live it. Do it. Do it.
Yeah.
Do it. You know, so, I mean, a lot of people are hurting. And this guy is amazing in the sense that he's touched so many people. And the thing about him that I didn't like the fact he's a Laker. Still don't like the Lakers, but I love me some Bean Bryant, and I love the fact that he had that Philly mentality in him that he just didn't give a damn. I'm gonna tell you what I gotta say. I don't care what you have to do. And I'll give you this quick story real quick. I remember AI talking about Kobe, and he told me a story in 2005, and this was like their first year. So the Sixers out in the West Coast to visit with the Lakers. So Kobe and AI go out to dinner somewhere, whatever. So Kobe takes AI back to the hotel, and AI says to him to effect, well, where are you going now? The conversation came up, well, what's your next move? AI, I'm going to go hit a club. Kobe's like, I think I'm going to go to the gym and get us some shots for tomorrow's game because I got to cook your ass. That was his mentality.
Right.
And you're right, LA. Like, did he feel as though he's from the suburbs? Yeah, he's a suburban kid. Yeah, he's a suburb kid. He wasn't like Rashid. He wasn't from North Philly. He wasn't Aaron McKee from North Philly or whatever. But you best believe he used to light their asses up when he got a chance to play them. You know?
Right.
He was exceptionally talented, but, I mean, more than talent, he had a drive that we've only seen in a few athletes that just have that killer instinct that they will take your throat to win. And it was too much between he and Shaq, and he had to learn how to humble himself, as we all do in life. But he was really turning into his prime. So, I mean, it's sad, but with every loss, there's going to be something positive to come through this. So, as the NBA mourns, I hope that the NBA looks at this as an opportunity to change the logo. I think he should be representative of the logo moving forward.
And you know,
Jerry
funny.
West was the logo.
Yep.
He was the logo for the first, half of almost a century. Well, not a century, but the first half of what is the NBA. And I think Kobe's it'll be appropriate for him to be the logo moving forward. And then eventually we'll get somebody else that we don't know that'll be the logo.
I want to just do a restart and let people know we're talking about the life, the time, the legacy, the impact of Kobe Bryant, tragically taken from us. And guys, I can't stress enough that 41 years young, I keep saying, and he ain't lived. I'll be 50, Lord willing, this year. This guy is 41. Andrew, that's just hurtful to me. And a couple of things that have been mentioned. And and by the way, I see you, Jerald Hoover, who's out in L.A. by the way. If just from a note, technically, if I pause, it's probably because I mute my phone because I'm coughing. I don't normally do that stuff on the air, but I want to let you guys know I'm there. I'm coughing because I'm trying to get over this cold. But Andrew, Orlando mentioned a few things. First of all, those people who always have something negative to say. I've heard the TMC stuff, and I think that that needs to be addressed in its time. And people, feel free this evening, people could bring it up. I'm just saying in terms of reporting, and I know T would have a lot to say about, these reporters, so-called reporters, these people like at the Super Bowl who've never covered a dime of a minute of the NFL, but get these passes to go to the Super Bowl and get these interviews. I digress. It's something we'll get into. The other part of it is, why is he taking a helicopter with the fog? Now we have an expert up here in Orlando who is a pilot, a real pilot, who could talk about those things. I'm so glad he's on and brought that up. So that dispels that part of it there. But I got to tell you, Andrew, I go back to Kobe Bryant and the fact that, I wasn't a fan of him. I'm like Orlando. I'm Philly, all the way. I don't like the Lakers. I don't like the Celtics. And I didn't like Orlando, but like I told my kids last night when this happened, I respected the hell out of Kobe Bryant and his work ethic and everything under that. But it really hit me yesterday really hard, and I cried. And it's okay for men to do so, right? And it was that aspect of Orlando pointed out a lot of what I wanted to say, that control, making sure you manage your time, being there for your kids, knowing that you wake up, and I'm a spiritual guy. I try to wake up with God on my mind first and my kids. What can I do to make my kids' life better? And I think, and I got choked up because I just went and spent a whole season, my son's first full football season, on the road. I mean, we were everywhere, and they lost in the championship, the Pee Wee Championship Super Bowl. They were the second best team in the United States at their age group, and it was heartbreaking. And I knew how that felt when it hurt. I can't ever imagine this man on a plane, on a helicopter, going down with his child, trying to tell her it's going to be all right, knowing you're going to crash. And some people survived, but unfortunately they didn't. So when you look at the Kobe in the second part of his young, 41 years young life, he seemed more content in the fact that, like Tony said, he was sort of that Michael, I'm still good, I could still play, and all that kind of guy, kicking it, scratching away from the game. There was some stuff with the Lakers and stuff, and he was it seemed like he was content just to kind of walk away from the game. His legacy is what it is. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame. He knew that. But when his daughter got sort of engaged into, as you call it, the soccer, the game we love, the greatest game, in this case in basketball, she got into his passion. And I'm sure I could just imagine, Andrew, that he had to think, wow, now I got a second lease on life. I want to play basketball now. I want to be in that environment. I want to be in the gym. I want to show her, as perfectionist as it could have been and tough on her, but it would have been a beautiful thing. And he seemed to be going in that direction. So I'm long-winded, and I do apologize, but talk about the assassin on the court that took out a lot of people, the expectations from himself to make sure that he did win without Shaq, because that was, as soon as Shaq left, he got blamed for it, and he's not going to win again because Shaq is gone. Shaq was the everyday people. Everybody loved Shaq. He's the goofy big kid that everybody loved. He's happy-go-lucky. So, he had to prove himself there, and proving himself was something he had to do in his whole career, to this guy that seemed to be very cerebral and like I'm good now. Like my daughter wants to do this, and he's always been sort of a family man. Certainly after the Colorado situation with the rape charge and sexual assault charge there. But talk about the two Kobes, because I think that's bigger, and it sets him apart from a lot of great players that he was content with walking away from the game he loved and the game he gave to so much, but was kind of reeled back in with the love and the passion of his daughter, while also being that great father.
Right. You've had, I'm sure, like you, I've had so many conversations with family members, with friends, cousins, just everybody that's who loves the game of basketball, and has really just been affected by this. One of the conversations I had was with a friend of mine who I went to college with, who's actually she's from Argentina, but when she first got to the United States, she spent a lot of time between New York and Los Angeles. In fact, I think she spent a lot more time in Los Angeles, but she was a big Lakers fan. And, we were talking about it last night, and she said that, he never took a play off. He never took a minute off. He gave everything he could on both sides of the basketball, both offensively and defensively. Okay? So when you talk about that, that's just the start of it. Then you talk about, all the relentless drive that he had to improve himself, to get better. All of the legendary stories about how many shots he would put up, how he'd get up early in the morning so that he could, get as many shots up as possible. How he was working with other players to try and get them into that quote unquote Mamba mentality. He gave everything he could possibly give to the game, including an Achilles. All right, and I laughed because I blew out my Achilles, playing soccer about a year and a half ago, and I cried like a baby because I thought I would never play again. All right, this dude got up and sank 2 free throws. Okay, that's how tough-minded, that's how dedicated he was to playing this game. And so when it was over, and he was okay with that because he knew that he gave everything he could possibly give to the game of basketball. And so it was easy for him to move on to really embrace being Vanessa's husband and father to those girls. It was easy for him to embrace, really helping out with, trying to spread the word about women's sports. And that's something I've got a passion for as well. I've got daughters about the same. I don't have a 4-month-old, thankfully, but I want to say thankfully, but I'm done raising the little babies anymore. But, I've got daughters his age, and I think you and I have kids about the same age, LA. So it was easy for him to go in and be that family man. There was a article that I read earlier today. I actually saw it last night, but read more in depth today about how on Wall Street he was very much in tune with, investments and growing his wealth and things like that. So you hear so much about people when they leave the game, they're kind of lost, but he was already setting himself up to be successful outside of the game. And so, he had his own, investment empire. And someone said, he was well known on Wall Street for someone who was into what's going on there as well. He took up so much that after the game had ended for him, that it was easy for him to move on to all of those different endeavors, to do all the things that he wanted to do. There's, people are going to, of course, people are going to talk about, the negative stuff. How much he was a quote unquote ball hog in the beginning of his, in the early part of his career. Obviously the serious charges that came out of the incident in Colorado. And I'm going to tell you, I have friends who have been sexually assaulted, and I know how that affects them, and it's something that I don't take very lightly. Okay, I don't know what happened. Only he knows, only that young lady knows, and only God knows what happened on that night. Okay, but again, it goes into this thing where how you don't put your trust in man, you put your trust in God. All right, and your heroes are going to disappoint you. Okay, and he did that, but I think he grew from that. And I think, you saw with his embrace, and we talked about it, how he embraced the WNBA. He was out there supporting the United States women's soccer team during the World Cup run last year. He was big on women's sports, and I think,
I have to, and Andrew, I don't mean to, excuse me, cut you off, but that was my follow-up question to you, and that's the fact that, listen, I've been since it, and my brother told me this, and I was so stunned. I had to do all the research, and I'm on everybody's website and TV and looking for this. ESPN hadn't even reported it right away. My point is that I saw so much outcry and so much love and so much respect for 24 in the soccer world.
Yep.
All across that so many people love this guy, and that just shows the stretch of respect and love that he had, even in soccer, Tiger Woods and golf and stuff. But just in the world that you live in, right, in that soccer world, he was so beloved.
He was a big soccer fan. He was, of course, you talk about the Italy connection with him growing up in Italy. He was a big AC Milan fan, and he was naming the great players like, Ruud Gullit and Marco van Basten. And, he spent time trying to get to know, players like, Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo, who quickly, took to social media to, really express, first their sadness of his loss and their condolences to the family. But, PSG, the team in Paris, where Neymar is now. And he was good friends with Neymar. And when Neymar scored a goal yesterday, it was an away game, but he went and found the camera and put up the numbers 2-4 and held his hands in a prayerful fashion, showing that, he was stunned by this loss. And he had said later that he had, found out about it during halftime of their match. And he was affected by it. He was a really big soccer fan. He loved the game. And he, I think it was pictures of him watching Mexico play Croatia in the 2014 World Cup down in Brazil. So he was a big fan of the Beautiful Game, and the Beautiful Game loved him back. Because they just don't expect, an American sports star, especially a Black American sports star, to really fall in love with the Beautiful Game. But, he had that connection from his time when he grew up, when he was in Italy, and just really got, really took that love with him and tried. He was in a couple of commercials. One of my favorite commercials was one right before the 2014 World Cup, and there was a section of that commercial where he's talking in Italian to the great Andrea Pirlo, who plays for the Italian national team, or did before he retired. So he really was he was well beloved in the soccer world, only because he loved the game as much as so many others did. So but it's not even just there. I mean, you hear at the Australian Open yesterday, the match between Kyrgios and Rafael Nadal.
Right.
Kyrgios went to his press conference in a Kobe jersey. Rafael Nadal, put on a Lakers hat when after the match was over. When he walked off the court. Because we don't like to say game recognized game. Okay, and when you see athletes in different sports excelling, you watch them, you see what they're able to do, and you respect it. I mean, Diego Maradona, I wouldn't even think he would even know who Kobe Bryant was, but he did, and he had a picture of Kobe Bryant on his Instagram page this morning. So, yeah, it's when someone like that who is so good at what they did. I mean, you're talking about, as you mentioned, probably one of the top 5 players of all time, all right? And when someone like that, meets a tragic end like that, it affects so many people. So, I grew up in Boston. I've been a Lakers fan, since my teens, and it's, I think of all the great Kobe moments. The lob to Shaq in Game 7 of the 2000 Western Conference Finals, that reverse tip-in that he had in Game 4 of the finals that year, just that dominant period that they had between 2000 and 2012, and then after Shaq left, the 81-point games, and the dunks on Steve Nash and Ben Wallace. Well, that was early in his career, but how he just kept giving teams buckets and really trying to carry the Lakers until they were actually get good again. And to finally climb that mountain again after Shaq left to become champion again. But I'm gonna tell you, I think the one picture I was looking for when I found out about this, and I was shocked when, just like everybody else, I had composed myself. I actually was out teaching one of my daughters how to parallel park yesterday because she's trying to get a driver's license. But it was, once I had kind of gathered myself, the first picture I looked for, and one of the moments that really still brought me chills when I was watching the video, was in the 2008 Olympics when in the gold medal game against a very good Spain team. He took over that game in the fourth quarter, and when he hit the 4-point play off that left wing to foul out Rudy Fernandez and basically put the game out of reach, and he just looked, got the foul, dropped the three-pointer, looked at whoever was, rooting for Spain and shushed them, and then later popped the USA jersey. That was, for me, that was the one video I was looking for, and it just showed that his commitment to the game, not just on the NBA level, but to bring the United States back onto the top of that podium at the Olympic Games. I mean, you remember he made that commitment the year before, after the United States had lost the year in 2006 at the FIBA World Championships, and he said, 2007, I'm coming, I'll play. And in 2008, he did it and came back in 2012 and won it again. So he was, and he was such an ambassador when he went to China in 2008, the Beijing Olympics. I mean, they called him the little flying warrior. I mean, because that's, that was the nickname that the Chinese had given him. And he embraced that. And he was just happy to represent the U.S. And it was just, I think you can't not talk about that moment as well, because I think, you talk about all the NBA stuff, which is, of course, important, and that's where he made his name. But, to really decide, hey, look, let me do something else. Let's hey, LeBron, hey, Dwayne Wade, hey, Chris Bosh, hey, Chris Paul, hey, Deron Williams, Jason Kidd. Let's go get this gold back. Let's put our country back on the top of that podium at the Olympics where we should be. And he did that, and he refused to let, and Spain kept making a run in that fourth quarter, and he refused to let Spain, get close. And he was the one that closed that game out for the United States. And that just, again, it just shows you, he's just that committed to making, to his craft, to that game of basketball. And it was that was the one thing I really looked for. That was the first picture I posted was him flexing that USA jersey with the number 10. And the reason why he chose number 10 is, again, because of that love of soccer, because the number 10, that's usually the man. Okay, if you're wearing number 10 on the soccer field, you are that dude, all right? And that's the reason why he took that number, So
and that shows his history. That such an intelligent man. That's I probably outside him, by all accounts, being a dedicated and great father. Such an intelligent man. Like, he just wanted to learn. He wanted to not just be the best, but he wanted to learn. Anybody who wants to speak multiple languages, anybody that has a passion for multiple sports, like legitimate, you could be a great athlete in one sport and follow sports, but like he was into it, and like he can speak the language. And by the way, Hoover, what Andrew's talking about, like the Barkley and Magic and Jordan Olympic teams, they had some challenges, but they crushed some people. But he also had the respect and did the autographs and all that stuff in those Olympics. I'm referring to Jerald Hoover, who I love. This is my brother. All my brothers are on the line now. Anyway, I love, and I have no qualms in saying that. But Hoove, you bring a couple of different perspectives. You have your book series, your hero series, where you talk about reading and how it's important. It's fiction, but it deals with young people understanding how important it is, or needing to understand how important it is to read, because read opens the mind. Kobe, certainly had to read and had to have the passion to read and the love to read, to speak multiple languages, and be as intelligent the intellect thing is one of the things that gets lost with Kobe Bryant. A fascinating man, a fascinating young man that's gone. But the challenges and the controversy certainly having to prove himself. Who coming out of high school, one of the few. I mean, you had the please help me, the big fella that played in Boston, and Kevin Garnett that came out early, and then you. So Kobe's one of those few guys. LeBron later and all that came out, had to prove then. Didn't even start. He made the All-Star team. Wasn't even a real starter on his team. Had to prove. They had to tone him down. They monitored his minutes. I've heard a lot about on some of the things, some of these shows about that first playoff series where he threw the air balls in Utah. Utah went on to play the Bulls and lose, of course, to the Bulls in the finals. I mean, all of those things he had to prove. Then he had to prove I can win without Shaq. Then he had to prove, okay, I won without Shaq. Am I the greatest Laker? Magic said today in his condolences, said we lost the greatest Lakers, so that should put that to bed right there. Mm-hmm. People can debate it if they want. So I want you to talk about him in that aspect. We all on this broadcast watched him for 20 years. That 17-year-old to 37 years old retiring and a shoo-in for the Hall of Fame. The maturation of that, the understanding, the work ethic, the leading by example, not leading with the voice, but by example. Like Andrew said, the Achilles tendon, going up to tearing it up, going up to shoot your free throws before that, coming back from that, playing a few more years. He went through a lot. And I thought that, like I said, not a fan for the team he played for, but a fan of his game and his work ethic. And the fact that I thought he got a bad rap a lot. The sexual stuff in 2003 in Colorado, he caused that. So that's separate. But this guy did it the right way, and people criticize him. He was too brash. He was too arrogant. He was too this. He was too that. But he was, he ends his life, as we say, 4th all time in scoring, 18 All-Star games, MVP, 5 titles, all the accolades aside, and he loved his babies. He loved his babies. Mm-hmm. And so talk about him in terms of him on the court, what he went through, if it was warranted, and just him as an overall person, because he was kind of, standoffish, from all accounts, but I'm sure you met him a lot. So just talk about his life, his legacy, and who he was on and off the court.
Well, I covered him for BASN during the finals when they played against the Nets, the New Jersey Nets. It was a 4-game sweep, but they really won a game in 2. But that's another story. But I got a chance to, that was him and Shaq. So I played the first one, I believe. Of course, yeah, it was one of the earlier ones. But he was young and brash and standoffish. But I think that was because he was chasing something. For him to go from the way he was back then up until, where he was as a father and a husband, it's like 2 different people. In a 20-year span, it was a total metamorphosis because you would never thought, just like we see some players that become coaches, and you was like, wait a minute, you're a coach, but you were this as a player. You know what I mean? And so you see how people change and evolve, and that is how he was. But he was well learned, and the thing about him was he didn't go to college. He went straight from high school at the 17-year-old. Matter of fact, he was playing in the NBA at the same age as his oldest daughter, Natalia. She's 17. He got drafted in the NBA as a 17-year-old. So he was super smart, and I think he was destined to go to Duke or something like that, where if he would have stayed more than 2 years, he probably known him. He would have graduated in 3 years and been a graduate assistant or something like that. That's how smart he was. One of the things that I like about him was even after, I don't know if he was doing it as a ode to Michael Jordan, because he studied Michael Jordan like nobody's business. He probably studied Michael Jordan more than Michael Jordan studied himself. But if you notice, even in the pictures now, the memorials, if you don't see him in a Laker uniform, you see him in a suit and tie. And that was I don't remember seeing him in a suit and tie when he was playing. Really, I don't remember seeing him in 20 years. I was covering him. I don't remember seeing him in a suit and tie. But he had short hair. Well, he's bald now, but he's wearing a suit and tie because I believe he was trying to give off the impression that, hey, I'm about business, the way Michael was. But Michael wore a suit and tie to games. It's funny when the NBA sees does these little red carpet things for most of the teams on the big networks. They're coming out wearing anything. Michael always wore a suit and tie. Kobe's doing the same thing. If he was out with his daughters or something like that, he may be loose, but he was a suit and tie guy. So his transition was like, okay, this is what I'm gonna do, and I'm gonna be the best at it. That's how he was as a player. Tracy McGrady said some stuff that was really deep on television today. And by the way, I'm out in LA. I'm here in LA, and he was saying that.
Out there too, what's
it's quiet, of course. Even like I went to a couple of stores today. It was quiet, and it wasn't as much traffic as I thought it would be. In the area that I'm in, I'm more near the airport, and then I go into the Watts area. But it was like it's quiet. It's quiet. Listen to the radio. They're giving older Kobe's. All the television stations, especially yesterday, it was all Kobe. It was just all Kobe, rightfully so. And some of the I don't know what they had back east, but the stations here, they had the people on, like the reporters on scene, but in the background you can actually see the helicopter smoldering still, because the way it was. Now you saw it at a distance, but the way it was that the firefighters couldn't get to it with a truck and a water hose because it was like a mile in, because it was happening like sort of like in the hills. So they had, and then I think one of the firefighters said that they couldn't use water because of magnesium there, because if they had the magnesium, it would have exploded. I mean, it would have gotten worse. Orlando could talk about this more so than I can, but the wreckage was still smoldering, and it didn't look like, and I hate to even say it like this, especially on the air, but I don't think they got the bodies out. So whatever was left there is just, it's just no remains probably. So that, when you start thinking about that kind of stuff, it just gets entirely weird. But
let me ask you.
I'm sort of. Go ahead.
Let me ask you this, Who, because you're a beat writer, you covering, you're inside the NBA. It's very. Well, let me say, okay, so LeBron is a Magic-like guy, the assists and all that. Kobe wanted to be, and I say this, and I'm hoping I'm saying this to Pat Nation and everybody listening in the right way. Not to say he wanted to be exactly like Mike, but I think Michael.
He wanted to be better.
Right, and he was hoping that he always and reading and understanding that his only regret is that he caught Michael at the end of his career. But here's my question to you. Some guys wanted to be like other NBA players, or they emulated some things about players. Doc was Doc, and then Mike took it there, and you keep going, and Kareem was Kareem. Who blocked that shot? LeBron emulated the Magic style, if you will, in terms of passing and whatever. But who had the courage to actually want to be like arguably the greatest player, not the greatest winner, and I hate people saying that because that was Bill Russell, NBA-wise, but the greatest player, at least in my lifetime, in Michael Jordan, that who had the courage to try to be like Mike? Like Michael was just beloved. Like everybody loved Mike, and he was the closer. He's the ultimate closer. A minute left in the game, he want to step on your throat. Period.
Mm-hmm.
But here's Kobe coming along saying, you know what? I'm gonna be better than him. My game, my mannerisms, and even my voice and things might sound like and look like and emulate Mike. I want to be better.
nobody had the courage to be better or be like Mike in the NBA. Post Mike, at all. In my opinion, you can and talk about that, and the fact that Kobe, again, he was aloof. So he wasn't. I want to be like Mike. He wasn't beloved by him. Everybody. Even Mike would go against Barkley or Malone or whatever, destroy them, and they still loved the dude. Like Kobe was standoffish. He wasn't that guy, but yet he wanted to be better. He wanted to emulate his game and be better than Mike. Talk about that courage. It takes a lot to be better.
I think his standoffishness came from how he grew up. Because he had to learn the language he had to learn the language out in Italy. I think he stayed. Well, Kobe is a Japanese name, and so I believe his father played in Japan also. So I think he speaks a little Japanese because Kobe is after that state, the beef. That's not an Italian name; it's a Japanese name, Kobe. But I think the way he grew up and how he grew up, and sometimes he's always cast aside. So I think, and even when he got drafted by the NBA, he was this brass kid like you mentioned, and veterans look at him like go somewhere and sit down. So he always had that sort of want to fit in type of thing, but his thing was not just fit in; he wanted to break through the doors. But Tracy McGrady said some stuff that was very deep today. I was watching him on the jump, and he said that, and I didn't know this part. I didn't know they were that close. But he said he would go to Kobe's house, but he would go there with his mother and father and 2 sisters. So in Philly, so he would go to his house, and they would watch Michael Jordan movies. Like even some of the home movies, he would just watch everything Michael did, and he would sometimes watch something and rewind it back. And Tracy looked at him like, "Yo, dude, what you doing?" But he was just studying everything he did, everything, the way he walked, the way he talked. You remember one time he was talking like Michael. I mean, with the mouth and everything.
Yeah.
It was how he chewed the gum. How Michael would say stuff like, the way we played, the way he would take basketball. Kobe started doing that because I remember some of my buddies and I would laugh about that. I'm like, what's this guy doing? But he was trying to morph himself into the greatest player that he ever saw in terms of like or witnessed or knew of. And I think he did it.
But I don't want to belittle the point,
fashion.
Gary. I don't want to belittle the point, but you are not like. Well, I'll take myself. Everybody on this broadcast. I was a huge Dr. J fan. When I met him as a reporter, he is the only person on the planet that I was in awe. When he shook his hand is as Hughes. He's 6'6". I was enamored. Like, oh my God, I was the kid in the projects with the hanger on the door with the either tape, because I ain't have no real puff ball. And I'm gliding from one point, put a little tape on the floor. And I'm trying to glide like Doc. I want to be like Doc. There's one thing if you're not playing professionally, you want to emulate the guy like we're fans, and then there's a guy who wants to be like that and take on the challenge to be like that and try to be better. I mean, not winning 6 titles, 7, 6 or 7
he was doing
titles.
That while he was still playing.
Right, and that's
he was doing that while Mike was still playing. Yeah,
I understand that, but what I'm saying is that to take on that challenge, coming into the league wanting to be like that, I think it probably, in retrospect, probably I would think it you can give your opinion on it, that not winning 7 titles past Michael, or at least 6 to tie, that that was probably if he had any regrets, I think that would be one of them, because he wanted to be better than the greatest player of our era, of our lifetime.
I don't think he looks at it as a regret. I don't think. I mean, I will say this: he may have wanted to have more than LeBron. You know what I mean? Especially the way he played. I think he would have. I think he would have regretted not having more than LeBron. If LeBron had 5 and he only had 3, I think regret would have set in a lot differently. And he probably wouldn't have been as warm to LeBron being in LA like that. I don't think he would have. But I think having 5, he at least tied Magic, because I think he mentioned something like that. So he at least tied Magic, and he didn't get Kareem because Kareem had 6. But him having 1 under than Mag, I don't think he looked at that as a regret to where that just looked like he looked at himself as a failure. Because now also you gotta remember this, because some people could have said this. well, you got 6 in 20 years. Michael got his 6 in, 13, 12? You know, I mean, so not saying people would have said that, but they could have been cynical and went that way because Michael didn't play as long as LeBron or Kobe. And he did his in, 13 years. Actually, I don't even think it was 13.
Yeah,
Remember,
and Michael
he
left.
He played baseball. He left, what I'm saying.
He left. He left. All was well in the world. Like this whole Brady thing with it, all that type of stuff. And then he came back, and then boom, he starts winning again. So that plays into it, you know.
Yeah. So his situation would be, I mean, you're always going to, and even if he had 7, people are going to still say something different about Michael. Those who are Michael lovers, so he would have had to deal with something like that anyway. But I don't think he saw it as a regret. And what I loved about him is what he was doing. And I'm like you guys, some of you guys. I wasn't a Kobe fan. I mean, I'm a Knicks guy, so I wasn't necessarily a Kobe fan back then. And I wasn't a Laker guy. I was a Paul Pierce guy when they played each other. You know, so it was fun. I was a Laker guy going up with Magic, but then I wasn't a Kobe fan when he went up against Vince and some of the other guys. So I wanted them to get a shot. But as far as respecting him and seeing his metamorphosis and how he changed and how he did certain things, you got to respect that. I mean, like totally. And he looked like a totally different person. I mean, like just the way he was with his wife and his kids, it was just like it's inspiring. But he was just, and then how he was with women's sports. And then just last week, and I think T. Mac had mentioned, he had said something about he thought, and I thought it was a crazy statement when I heard it. I'm like, these guys can't hang with that because I remember. Who was it? Was it Ann Myers? I think it was that tried to keep up with. Well, I know nutrition and everything is different now, but I believe she had to try out with
the Pacers.
With the Pacers, right? With the Pacers, right? Yeah, and they made a concerted effort to run her off the floor. But it was different then. So I mean, it was hand checking back then, so it was a lot more physical back then. So. He might have been right, you know. And listen, he had a keen insight to certain things. And one of the things that now you mentioned something about me being a writer and reading and stuff like that. One of the things that I admired about him was him being well read. And see, this is where we talked about this before last week. How I'm having a problem with this, and I spoke to an educator last night who's over a special ed district out in the Capitol in Washington D.C. I said one of the things that we got to be careful with our babies here, and Ella, we talked about this, is that you putting all these machines in front of them, telling them press buttons. You're not allowing them to think. You're not allowing them to rationalize. Not allowing them to process things a certain way. All they're doing is mindlessly pressing buttons to get past. And when you get Jim Quick, KWIK, that this is where I learned this from. That CEOs read 50 books a year and employees read 2, I would challenge that if Kobe had the time, he would read 50 books a year. Or knowing him, he'd read 100. He'd be like, wait a minute, because he's the type of guy that would think that way. But okay, if CEOs read 50, I'm a CEO myself, I'm reading 60. You know what I mean? That he would have thought like that. But yet, look at how he spoke. Look at how when he made speeches, you didn't hear a lot of I mean, even when he gave interviews, look at the answers that he gave. Even as a young kid, he didn't sound like he didn't know what he wasn't talking about. He didn't sound like that. And I marvel at this young man. And this is without college. This was just straight learning and wanting to process things and figure things out.
Right.
Men, especially our young black brothers, if you want to emulate anything from him, when they say mama mentality, I would say from the learning perspective. That is where he attacked things. He studied things.
You know,
he learned.
It's so funny. I was, you know, one of the things I've implemented. I'm not tooting my horn. I'm just saying it in general. Is it like my kids? Like I challenge them to read books that are big boy books. So read it. You might stumble through some stuff, but I want you to read it because reading. Oh man, we can go. That's we could do a week, a month series on reading, and it's something that I'm glad who champions and I'm so glad to know him because it challenges me to challenge them and challenge myself in that aspect. If you're just joining us, we are talking about the life and time, legacy, the impact of Kobe Bryant, who tragically died along with his 13-year-old daughter in a helicopter crash yesterday. I'm sure everybody knows about that. Incidentally, with the reading, when someone emailed me, and I have to mention that I know that, at some point he was estranged with his father, Joe Jellybean, who played in Philly and Houston, played in Italy, but you have to get some kind of parenting to have that drive.
Oh, no question.
And so I just want to make sure that's clear too. That I'm not saying, Joe tried to sell some stuff, and that was the whole thing, and he was estranged. Kobe was estranged from his siblings even. But at the end of the day, Kobe wasn't just coming out of his mother's womb thinking, I need to speak multiple language and learn to read. That had to be instilled in him, and so I have to mention that.
No question. Yeah, no question about that. And I really hope. Don't know. I haven't heard reports about that yet. That I've heard him having reconciliation with certain reporters that he was sort of had situations with, but I haven't heard anything about if anything happened with him and his parents. I hope it did. I hope they spoke on some level before
I believe they did.
This happened.
Yeah, I
because that would just be beyond tragic if he hadn't.
Yeah, because you don't want to leave this earth like that. Gary Gray, of course, on the Gray Leopard Cove airs on Saturdays on the line. And Gary, Jerald Hoover's in L.A., doing some things. You live in Oaktown, in that area. Talk about the impact of this death and the fact that, people can debate about Kobe being the greatest Laker or not. I would say he is, only because, with all due respect, and I don't have a problem with somebody saying Magic's great. I can live with it and sleep with it. But Kobe being the greatest Laker, even though, like who said, Kareem got the 6 rings, of course, Milwaukee and all that. But the thing is that, Magic did have a Jamal Wilkes and a Bob McAdoo and a Michael Cooper and later Byron Scott and A.C. Green, and the list goes up. James Worthy, probably the greatest outside of Michael Jordan, Carolina player to play in the NBA, and and that kind of stuff. Kobe had Shaq. He certainly did for those first rings, but he did it with a Paul Gasol later and some other stuff. So he didn't really have the All-Star Hall of Famers. And I'm not taking anything away from Magic, who just was a nemesis, and particularly to my Sixers. But I just think Kobe was the greatest Laker, even with LeBron being there. But talk about the impact there, and the fact that, Gary, Kobe could have been mayor of L.A. if he wanted to. He probably could have been governor of the California, because people kind of respected his grind, sort of like with me and Big O with AI. Like, the people respected that grind, that Philly grind with AI and that kind of. With Kobe might have been kind of privileged, coming from privilege, but he had that grind, and people kind of knew him, kind of respected his game and respected who he was.
Well, I think he had the talent.
No, I do apologize for that. Who that was for Gary Gray on the line. Gary, you there? Okay. It wasn't Gary, maybe. Who you can respond to that? I want to get everybody to respond to that, especially Orlando, in that Philly moment. I'm not a Barkley fan, but I'm gonna go to who first. I'm not a Barkley fan of Big O off the court, but people respected Barkley for that grind. So who he had that respect, not just from the players who are mourning and probably hurting more than we are, certainly. But the way that he handled his business, man, like the the story that Orlando told about him and AI. AI wanted to go to the club, and I'm a huge AI fan. AI wanted to go to the club. Kobe wanted to go shoot some hoops, and that's sort of that difference. And it seems like the fans out there, they know him. They didn't know him personally. They seem to know him and his work ethic, and he brought that to the arena every night.
Well, he had the talent of a superstar, as we saw, but he had the mentality of a scrub, a bench warmer, and I think that played a part in his evolution, because his work ethic was that of a 12th man. You know what I mean? He acted as if he wasn't going to be able to play, or he wouldn't play not unless he did X amount of things. So he was driven, and on that level, and I think that is something that's not teachable. You know, you can tell somebody to have you never question his motor. I mean, even when he got hurt, I think he tore his labrum or rotator cuff, or right hand. That he shot free throws left-handed. You know, so he one time somebody told a story that he had busted up his hand some kind of way, but he wanted to work out, so he went to UCLA and did everything left-handed. I mean, everything he did left-handed. You know, but so his drive is not something that you can teach. You can wish it for some people. You can wish it for your kids. You can wish it for your teammates. Wish it for anybody. But if you don't have it in you like that, or if you don't accept it to be such, you know, I'm not saying you won't be successful. But his thing was he wanted to be. He didn't want to just be successful. He wanted to be dominant. And I think that's what sets him apart from anybody else. He wanted to be dominant. He didn't just want to be successful. And that's where that mama mentality comes from. You know, he was getting on Stephen A. Smith because Stephen A. didn't write a book yet, and he wrote one before him. And you know, Stephen A.'s a writer. And it's funny, I had a conversation about Stephen A. about writing books, and he said he would write one, but that was about 15 years ago when I asked him about that, but he never did. And here come Kobe saying the same thing. He said, "How you gonna write? How you gonna be a writer and you don't write a book yet?" And I beat you to it. So it's a lot of things that this guy took hold to that you know, everybody could just wish that they had that kind of tenacity.
L.A. I think and I'm watching this as it's happening now, and I think it's tremendous what the players are doing the first 48 seconds of every game. It's you can't think of a better tribute, because, and you look at play and see, like you said, these kids that are out here now, they grew up with Kobe, and Trae Young basically threw on a number 8 jersey yesterday. So and it was interesting when it first happened yesterday. I didn't know what was going on, and I was thinking, 24 seconds, and it was like, and I've been watching
and 8 seconds.
Yeah, well, most of them have been doing 24. It seems like I'm watching this. I was just watching the start of Orlando and Miami, and they did the 24, and that's the thing, because I'm not gonna lie. When he got both the numbers retired, my first thought was, gee, that's a bit much, but that was him though. That when you really look back on it, that's what he was all about,
Yeah. I want to bring in Nick Anastos and Gary Gray on the line. Nick Anastos, of course, from Anastos Media and play-by-play voice. Excuse me, guys, my play-by-play voice of UMass Lowell basketball. And Nick, two-part question. The first part you answered. The second part I want everybody to answer around the horn if you can. But the first point, your thoughts on Kobe and his impact on the game, transcending the game. Where does he stand? And then the second question is, and this goes back to something that and Tony talked about, which I asked Tony about, Thurman Munson dying, Roberto Clemente dying tragically in plane crashes, doing the right thing outside of the game, being beloved for the game. And certainly, one would say, arguably, that Kobe was greater in terms of his game than those two particular players. Arguably. right? So even with that, and this second part is for everybody, but I'll stay with you, Nick. Does the fact that Kobe is he was in the midst of the social media with the Instagram and the Facebook and this and that, so you can see all this. He put up the 81 against Toronto. You can see it right there on the YouTube and this and that, as opposed to Ali dying and some others. That this tragedy, not to take away anything from anyone or any situation, is more impactful, not just because of the age group and the age that looks at Kobe as the second coming of Michael Jordan, but also in this day of social awareness, where people they can pick up and find and do and research anything right at their fingertips. Like, it's different from the Thurman Munsons and the Roberto Clementes and the Alis and those that died. Ali, lingering died, but certainly the first two tragically, that it's not as impactful, or maybe as more impactful with Kobe because of the age group and because of the age of social media.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said about that. I think that the social media and technology in general has allowed word to spread at unprecedented rates. When I first heard the news yesterday, only TMZ had been reporting it for the initial, I don't know how many minutes or whatever, until it caught. But I think, to your point, it hits everybody a little bit harder because of how immediate the information is at their fingertips. I think plays into your point a little bit. Overall, I would say, yeah. I mean, this. I'm 37 years old. This has got to be one of the most unexpected, unnatural celebrity deaths that I can remember. I think that Biggie and Tupac had a similar impact in terms of how untimely it was. They were, taken at the top of their game, so to speak. What they did for the genre is really the only somewhat comparable scenario that I can come up with. And then you're talking about a guy who was in the league for 20 years, played at an all-star level for 20 years. I mean, that his career is almost as long as a generation in its own right. So, you've got fans like me who are now in their late 30s who, were young enough to follow him in '96 when he came out of high school and follow his entire career. And then, as you alluded to, this next, millennial generation, these 20-somethings that are in the league now, certainly grew up, as little kids watching him play in his prime or whatever. And then you have older fans like, my father and the baby boomer generation that, can appreciate the sport and can appreciate his place among the greats as well. So you're talking about a figure that really transcends multiple generations. You couple the untimely, unnatural death in the age of social media, and this is what you get. This is obviously tragic in its own right, no matter what era it happened in. But the fact that it's so widespread so quickly and you have it covered from so many angles almost immediately, it just amplifies the impact right away.
Nick, just to follow up, you being in Boston, in that area at least, in New Hampshire, but covering Boston sports, and you remember, at least, you're certainly young, but remember the Len Bias tragedy. Are we more, and this is a question for everybody else again, are we more or less empathetic based on the tragedy? Kobe Bryant died instantly, and the way he died is not just about the helicopter, Nick. You and I text back and forth, but the fact that we found out that his child was up there. That is what made me cry. Like, how do I tell my kid a plane or helicopter going down that we're going to be all right, knowing that how do you do that, right? So Len Bias died tragically, and it's a tragic death. He took these drugs and things, the circumstances around it. He died, right? So, do we cut off our empathy at some point when it's a instant? Wow, there wasn't any drugs involved, wasn't anything involved. It was just a tragic accident, as opposed to somebody who could have allegedly, and I'm being very sensitive to this, that allegedly could have maybe made a better decision, and then the empathy type of feeling runs out.
I think it depends on the individual. I think most of us are forgiving. I think most of us understand that there's no coming back from death and don't wish that, obviously, on anybody. I think most of us understand that people make mistakes, especially young people, like in the case of Len Bias. And I think most people find the tragedy for what it is, no matter really what the circumstance surrounding it. If it's a tragedy, it's a tragedy. Now, on the other hand, there's certain members of the population that are a little less forgiving, let's say, that may follow up the sentence of, oh, what a tragedy, but he should have been doing this or he shouldn't have been doing that or whatever it is. But I think most of us are understanding, are forgiving, and are able to recognize and offer condolences to people who are affected by tragedies. I think there's more goodness than not, I think, in the average person.
Gary Gray from the Gray Leopard Cove, certainly not in L.A., but lives in Oaktown. And Gary, what's been sort of the mood, first of all, day two, if you will, because this happened yesterday. And, those two questions, Andrew Dixon's on the line, and he talked about the soccer world and other sports that are really saddened by this. And a lot of what we saw, Gary, on TV, not to say all, but a lot of what we saw in terms of the sports world, including Tiger, who he grew up with, including others who he grew up with, are in that age group or younger. Even Nick Anastos on the line, he's 37. So is the tragedy more impactful because of the age group and the social media there? And then talk about, as I asked Nick, about the fact that do we mourn longer and have more compassion for those whose life God, like Kobe, ended tragically, or those who are like Elvis, who did drugs and he died and people love him, but people feel like, well, if he didn't do drugs, he still might be here?
Well, let me say that because of the information age, we get information so fast and so quick. We had to analyze it immediately. Which back in the old days, it took us a couple hours to get there. Let me give you an example what I'm talking about. I turn the TV on Sunday. Right? I see CNN news break. A helicopter goes down. I'm like, it's 10:55 or 10 o'clock my time. I'm like, what's this? And then it dawned on me, okay, it has to be somebody important because they would not have done that. So within 20 minutes, it was going right. I'm thinking, wow, that was quick. See, we get information so fast, it makes your head spin. And that's where we are right now.
But what about again in terms of the forgiveness? That first of all, I think we all agree. Nobody owes a damn thing about forgiveness. Like we don't have to. Those who perish don't need for us to forgive them. You know what I mean? Death is death. What I was gonna say though, Gary, death is death. Like whether you died because it's tragic in the helicopter, like Kobe so young, or you made some wrong decisions, you died. The person who died doesn't owe anything to anybody. It's just a matter of what it is. So I guess my question to you is, you know, are we more forgiving of those who died with no doing of their own, as opposed to people who have, you know, had a part in that death, you know, drugs or alcohol or whatever the case may be?
The answer is yes. The answer is yes, because they had no control over this. Kobe had no control over that plane going down. Right? Whereas everybody had full control of what he was doing. So we look at everybody differently than we would a Kobe Bryant.
Well, let me ask this to go around the horn, and if you're just joining us, we're talking about the life and times, legacy, and impact of the untimely, not the death is timely, but the untimely death. And I will continue to stress, 41 years young, 41. Everybody on this broadcast, with the exception of Nick Anastos, have lived longer than Kobe Bryant. I mean, everybody. And so really. But Orlando, you know, there is, and I'm not making the case, but I'm asking the question because the question was asked to me. And every time questions are asked to me, I bring them forth on the air for you professional insiders that I respect to answer this question. And Gary said yes. Yes. Len Bias played a part in his death. Kobe Bryant's death was tragic, certainly with his daughter up there. Nobody, including him, other than God, if you believe in a higher power, knew that was going to happen. So don't we need to have some form of forgiveness in that aspect? Because in both cases, I'm just bringing up and playing advocate, Len Bias had potential. His potential was he could have been one of the greatest players coming out of college, Maryland, in the game. He had that potential. Kobe had his potential of being part two of being a great player in that same organization known as the National Basketball Association. And so potential was there to move forward and do great things in both cases. One had a little more, had a lot more control than the other. So then why not the legacy forgiveness, not the legacy of Kobe versus Len Bias, because there's no comparison, but the legacy of the potential of how great those particular people could have been. And then, of course, the part I mentioned about the age of social media, that does that play of more of a tragic death of Kobe more so than others, because we live in, as Gary said, where you could just pull something up and get that information right away.
You know, as I mentioned earlier, I'm extremely upset at TMZ because they didn't allow the authorities to do their job. they have their insiders, somebody on the first responders for LAPD or LA County PD, recognized that it was Kobe Bryant's airplane, and they got that and they ran with it. And so for his wife, Vanessa, she didn't even get a chance to be. They didn't even confirm with her that it was her husband and her daughter on that airplane before she started getting calls from people. So I'm extremely pissed, and yes, this will be magnified with this era that we lived in of instant gratification with social media and social networking. I don't think that's going to go away. It is what it is. I'm extremely upset with it. Two, the part here, Kobe, I don't want us to lose sight, but Kobe already played his career. Like, his career was done as far as basketball. There was another aspect of him that was beginning. And it was mentioned on the call of him wearing his suits. I think Hughes was talking about it, wearing the suits and him being in tune with. He was going to go far with just his intuition of how he functioned. You know, you're literally what we could have seen was the first third generation professional basketball family. In the Bryants, with Jelly Bean being the first, Kobe being the second, and with Gigi going to be the third generation. So, we were robbed of that opportunity for this young lady. It's hard to fathom. I mean, he lost his life, and I know the magnitude, but sadly, these events happen, and they happen all the time with aircraft going down and so on and so forth, and things happening with that. And forgive me because I'm a little upset because I'm reading, like, everybody's trying to search for news. So the Wall Street Journal did something on the pilot, and he was cleared to fly in unfavorable weather and so on and so forth. That is such a crock of shit, LA. It is such a crock that this dude had thousands of hours. He was a veteran instrument flying person. He could check you off if you were going to get your instrument approached. Something happened to that aircraft, which we don't know right now. Something happened, and it's unfortunate that it took the lives of 9 people, but something happened. And so until we have this investigation this investigation takes part truly, we don't know. But I'm getting tired of the speculation online and on the media. Like, nobody knows what happened, and so, like, forgive the French, but everybody shut the hell up as far as, not no one on this call, but shut the hell up with these phony reports. No helicopter rotary pilot can tell you what happened. No fixed-wing pilot can tell you what happened right now. It's all theory, but he was perfectly in control of that aircraft, and something happened that took their lives. And again, the scary part of this is for all of us that are fathers and all of us that are uncles and cousins and brothers and so forth, the last 90 seconds of this man's life, and you said it, and, I remember I was in the car when you said it, L.A., that he probably, knowing him, he's trying to comfort his daughter, knowing that it's not going to be okay. But for his daughter's sake, he has to make her believe that it's going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's eerie. That is an eerie feeling. As I hear my kids running above my head now in the house, that's an eerie feeling to have as a father.
I have to say this to you, though, Orlando, and I'm going to go to T and then go back to Nick Anastos, and we won't go much longer. And then Gary, that, as a parent, right? So we both were parents. You got kids my age, right? That it makes me afraid. I have to be honest. The one thing, when I woke up today, because everything happened yesterday from this broadcast, is that my biggest concern, Orlando, you being a pilot, my biggest concern is that I don't want to take trips with my kids on a plane anymore. Like, that was my biggest fear. Like, I don't want to ever put them, if I'm going to die, I want to die on a plane or a helicopter by myself. My biggest fear is that, but the biggest fear of all, and this goes to everybody who will get a chance to talk, is that I don't want to bury my child. I don't want to. I don't want, that is, and so with Kobe being, by all accounts, the man he was, the father he was, the black father he was, Orlando, I don't want to bury my child. And if part of burying my child is exposing my child to more instances of being, although we know statistics show even by flight or whatever that you're safer in the air than on the ground, that I don't want to do that, Orlando. I don't want to fly to my vacation with my kids right now. I don't want to do that. And this was a veteran pilot, and you're a veteran pilot, but there are a lot of those things that come into play when you think about it, right? You maybe your thoughts are different because you're an actual pilot, right? But when you're on a plane and you get on a plane and you think of the tragedy of an icon, a player that was only 41 years old who had to, we're assuming, had to explain to his daughter, his child, his baby, that everything's going to be all right, or whatever he said, knowing that they're going to crash. I don't want that for my kids. I don't want that for my boys. And I'm sure there are probably people, Orlando, out there that are parents like us that are thinking the same way. They have to be. They have to be. If you think about Colby and the daughter, you got to be thinking about that part. You have to be thinking about that part.
Listen, LA. Listen, I get your feeling, but I will give you 59 million reasons why traveling in a car is even worse than a plane. And I get it. I have that argument with my wife. Like, don't take the kids up and go fly. But my kids and I, we love to go fly. We love to go fly. We love to relax. We will get in the plane. We'll go, we'll fly all the way up there where Nick is,
Sure,
we'll
they
fly
do.
around
They
Salem.
will.
And fly around Salem and come back. And that's a nice little 4-hour trip, round trip, going up and down. And they love it. And it's the opportunity to show them how easy it is and how to navigate. Like, that's another part of the life that I don't think that we take advantage of as people. But I love it. I despise going to the airport and doing that. So, and that's one of the things that got me into flying. But I understand that, because the reason you fly is to save time. It's to save time. And I mean, getting in a car, hell, what you see it every time there's a winter storm up here at T-Mac. We've been living in all of us, Hughes, Jerald, everybody. Nick, excuse me, all of us live in the Northeast. But every time it snows, you get the same news reporter out there. There's an accident on the highway. It's 95, it's 64, it's 91, it's 84. Major car pileup, and it's every year, all the time, same thing. It's a snowstorm. So we only got one guarantee in life right now. We've all been born. We got one life. We've got one guarantee. We're going to all die, and none of us knows that time that's going to happen. And as a parent, you want to be protective of your children, but we don't know when that time's going to come. So, I mean, you love your boys up, and you will continue to love your boys up. I will continue to love my kids, and everyone else will love their kids that's on this call. But we can't live fearful of just saying, hey, this might happen. Anything can happen anyway. So I live differently, and again, you know what happened to me. So my perspective of this is different. So I'm on.
No, and
I'm on
I want to be. No. Let me be clear before I go to T-Mac. Let me be clear. I said that thought process happens. We don't live those thoughts all the time, but those thoughts have come into my mind. And I do know that you were on death's door and people don't know your testimony, it's something that we need to, at some point we'll put it on the air, whatever the case may be. But I'm not saying that I'm raising my kids different from yours in terms of that. What I'm saying is that thought process crossed my mind, that you can't, and that's why I say you're safer. Statistically, you're safer in the air than you are on the ground. I get all that. I'm just saying that
I gotta get you up,
parent,
LA. I gotta get you up and let you have control of the plane and let you enjoy it and find how easy it is to go see your family up in New Haven. We can go fly and come see T-Mac or go see Nick and Anastos, and we realize that we're up there in 4 hours on what should have been a 13-hour car ride. And then all of that fear will be going right out of your system. You won't even worry.
Right, and that's all, and that's fine. And T, he mentioned New Haven and all of that, but the first question I asked you when you started this broadcast was, is this a Thurman Munson, Roberto Clemente moment? And now I ask you, in this age of social media, where, like Orlando and everybody else has said, everything is at your fingertips. If you want to know, Nick had said, hey, I couldn't believe it. And then, it's all at our fingertips. We can find out. So it's a weird question in the sense of a tragedy, but is the tragedy more impactful for others that even, don't even follow sports, let alone follow anything, but they know about it because it comes across on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and everything else under the sun.
It's a blessing and it's a curse. If you ever go to YouTube and watch some of the old broadcasts of the day that Kennedy was killed, and it was very similar in the sense of there was some misinformation put out there. There was, a sense of TV sort of grew up that weekend that Kennedy was killed. And I know there are going to be people saying, how are you going to compare the president getting killed to athlete? But it's more so the impact than the actual person. And it's funny, you mentioned Len Bias. I was actually working that day. And it was this was the Register. I was the
New Haven Register. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the thing that always struck me was the initial story that moved and the subsequent stories that moved as the day went along. His time of death was changed. His how he was, how they found out about it. What he initially, because initially they said he died of a heart attack, and then eventually it became a thing of then the drugs were mentioned as well. Again, I go back to the Kennedy thing. People say that folks, America lost its innocence, so to speak, after that weekend when Kennedy was so violently killed. And the reason why I bring that up for this is because whenever it's a polarizing figure, whether it be an athlete, a musician, a politician, a world figure, or what have you, there's always the three stages. Now, yesterday was the first stage of just the shock of they're gone. Now, we're in the second day and we're still, there's still mourning. There's still, the terrible phrase I'm probably using, Monday morning quarterbacking of why he should have flown, why he shouldn't have flown, and whatever. And all of that, I would definitely defer to Orlando because he's experienced it and everything. I think, and see, the thing is, in reading about this and here, they've taken that flight a bunch of times. that certain flight
Right.
that they took, they've taken it several times, and
Right.
it just it just so happens that this one time it failed, and that and again, Orlando probably knows this better than all of us. That happens. That is part of when you become aeronautically savvy, I suppose. If I'm butchering the word, forgive me, but it's a lot. I got to sort of piggyback to what Nick said. A lot of it has to do with the time, with the times, and who the person was. Now, ironically, when Bias was drafted, and then the next day he was gone. And in this instance, Kobe was celebrated, because LeBron had passed him, and LeBron gave a great, tribute to him. But he didn't know that he was, in a sense, writing the man's, epitaph. In a sense, no one knew that. And for us to, basically see this come out the way it did yesterday, it's still a bit of a shock. Look, when 9/11 happened, you had a lot of people that got conscious about planes and traveling and just all sorts of things. It's human nature. We tend to, oh wow, I may never do that again or something. But you have to let some time. Time is the greatest healer of all. And what you're saying now, you may look back on it and hopefully be able to laugh. Maybe after you've flown a few times. I've only flown a handful of times myself, and I understand. I to be honest with you, I wish I could fly more, because I'd be able to get around more. I'd be able to see more of my friends on a consistent basis and everything to that effect. But yeah, there's a
concern. Yeah, sure.
Well, look.
I'm not. Maybe concern is not the right word. All I was saying, and I want to. What I was right, but all I was saying, and I wanted to be clear, is that when a tragedy like that happens, and when you relate a child the same age and things of that, various factors, you start questioning things. I want to be clear. I'm not saying that I won't fly again or fly with my kids again or anything like that. What I'm saying is that those things pop up into your head as a parent. You're thinking you're above ground. You're looking down, and you got your kids. I can't remember who the star was, and it was like, okay, I think it was Jalen Rose. He said, I got my mom on one side, my kids on the other side. We're in a plane, and then they're giving instructions, and then all of a sudden, I'm feeling like, oh man, well, dag, I got the people I love the most on a plane, and so that's all I'm saying. You have those moments where you think about, Dad, I got two boys. I ain't having no more. These are my spawns, Orlando, and these are who I love and are going to further my legacy, whatever that legacy is. And I started this broadcast and for Nick and Gary, and I'll say it again, was that I would never ever want to bury my kids. I don't even know how to fathom it, just even thinking about that. That would never want to. No parent wants to ever want to be in a position that the late and great Kobe Bryant was in. We're assuming in his mindset going down onto the ground in the helicopter with your daughter with you. That's unimaginable. And so what I'm saying is that when you get into those situations, and Orlando, you got more kids than I do, right? And you love your babies. and you love your son, you love your daughter, you love those. So those thoughts might not creep in your head because as a pilot, you know you are in control and you know the checklist and things of that. As a parent and someone who's just flying, who knows nothing about it at all, one of the things that really upset me, and I want to go quickly to Nick Anastos, one of the things that really upset me was the fact that it did not go to Gary, is that as a parent, you're looking at, I can't imagine this. And so Kobe as a player, you can debate, Nick, but Kobe as a father, I think probably in his last, I'm assuming, we're all assuming because we're not there, we weren't there, that, you know, as a father going through his head and how to console your daughter, knowing that probably this is the end, and it was, that has to be very unnerving and to say the least. And so, you know, with that being said, I would think, Nick, that was going through his mind, not so much about his legacy or anything else. And certainly, by all accounts, he didn't have to worry about that. I think this year he would have been a shoo-in for the Hall of Fame anyway. But it's really a thought that, as Jay Williams has been saying all day, I think he's really kind of captured it, is that, you know, Kobe transcended the sports, certainly NBA, but what made him so great is that everybody knew he was great. They maybe didn't like him and the team he played for, but they respected him because of his ethics and the fact, the way he, you know, handled himself and the way he played and the way that he, it seems, as all accounts, instilled that into his kids and his wife. Nick?
Sorry, Ellie, you're breaking up a little. Can you say the last one again?
I was just saying it in terms of his aspirations on the court, but the fact that what he instilled to his kids, even in their deathbed, I'm sure probably the reassurance, but the work ethic. You would think as parents, we want our children to take on the good things of us, of what we do. And certainly I would think, by all accounts of what was been said, that that's what he instilled into his kids. And certainly I'm sure he probably had to have some reassurances, even in the sight of death, with his daughter on that helicopter crash.
Yeah, and having him in the home for their entirety of the childhood, I think, is important. Not only to follow his word, but to follow his example, I think, is important when you're talking about character development. So, you know, he had his values, and he was going to make sure that those around him, those closest to him, valued the same things. And he did a good job outlining them. You know, hard work, teamwork, perseverance. I mean, this guy was a walking, breathing example of all those things. And, you know, to have him serve as an in-home role model for those kids, for his daughters, for sure, I think not only has gone a long way to this point, but will continue in his absence as well. I think he's done a good job of laying down that foundation that is everlasting.
How much do you think that he impacted players that, you know, my kids never really saw him play. You know, they're 13 and 12, right? So they didn't really see him play either. But because of his lead by example mentality and his work ethic. How far did that go? It seems, Nick, that it's gone well beyond the NBA, but how far and impactful do you think that went when it came to players in the NBA and athletes beyond?
I think we're seeing the results. I think we'll continue to see. He was an icon for the current generation. And like Jordan before him, I mean, you opened up at least the part I've been listening to of the show with, wanting to be like Jordan in every way that he could, including the work ethic, and most importantly, the work ethic. So if the younger generation looks up to someone who works hard, typically that generation or those that are touched by him are going to work hard as well. So, I mean, we've seen it all the last 24 hours with the current crop of NBA superstars all saying in one way or another how impactful Kobe was in their pursuit of the game, in their conditioning, and, their drive overall. So, we're seeing a whole generation of players, at least the ones that are going in, above and beyond day in and day out. We're seeing that right now unfold, and we'll continue to see that over the next decade or so.
Final two questions for you. I know you got to go, and these questions will be for Orlando, Gary, and T-Mac. Should the NBA have found a way to stop the games yesterday? Should they have done it today, the rest of the week? Is that warranted, if anything? And then the second question to you is, where does he stand? Accolades are accolades. I mean, a lot of great players have accolades. Baseball looks at a lot of different dynamics. They stand on their moral ground, and certainly NFL does as well. NBA, I think, is a little different because I think, for me, their moral grounds come in before they actually even set foot on the court. So when you look at him in the totality of it, where does he stand on and off the court and play and championships and all of that in terms of top 5, top 10? Where do you place him? Those questions.
I would put him in the back half of the top 10. To specific, probably 9 or 10. When you take a look at my criteria, it's rings, it's finals MVPs, and it's regular season MVPs. And he's got check marks, obviously, in all three of those big categories repeatedly. So I would say I would put him in number 9 if we're going to be specific in terms of the top 10. Certainly,
well, who would be above him? Who would be above him? Obviously, Michael would say, but who would be above Kobe at number 9?
Well, you got to go Russell, 7 and 5 MVPs. I know we're talking all-time greats. Bill Russell was an all-time great. So was Kareem. Put Kareem on that list. I would put Magic on that list. 3 regular season MVPs, 3 finals MVPs. Kobe on 1 and 2, respectively. Tim Duncan is another one. Multi-time season MVP, 3-time final MVP. Same era as Kobe, 5 rings. I'll put Bird in there as well. Probably in there as well right now. How many we up to now? That's 7 or 8, I think. You can say what you want about Shaq. Yeah, I think Shaq is probably right there with him. I mean, we can pull hairs there. But yeah, I would say somewhere side of the top 10 would be, I think, where he falls when it's all said and done.
And then, so the point of, when you look at the first question I asked you in regards to, certainly we talked about where you would place him, but in terms of and I lost my train of thought with the first question. Oh God. Wow, I normally don't do that, guys. If you can help me on that, but with him,
well, that's what happens when you talk for 2 hours straight. LA, don't stress about it.
Right. I'm old and already forgot my train of thought. But I guess certainly you would say he's the greatest Laker, at least.
No.
Or Magic, or no? You say Magic is the greatest.
I would take Magic and Kareem, frankly.
Okay, so he'd be third. Okay,
yeah,
all right.
Not Magic 9 trips to the finals. 5 rings, 3 finals MVPs, 3 regular season MVPs, and he's out of the game by 31. Right? His career got cut down short, and he still achieved all that. I would probably say Magic.
Right. And of course, Kareem being second, Kobe being third. Nick, as always, I appreciate your time, man, and thank you for your insight. I know that a lot of the Boston stuff up there at Doc Rivers and him beating Boston and Boston beating them and all that, a lot of that stuff has been playing. We'll get your thoughts on it next week. And by the way, Kansas City or San Francisco in the Super Bowl?
I don't have a pick yet, LA. I was just talking about that off the air. I don't. Depends on which way the wind blows is going to depend on my answer right up till kickoff. So we'll have to text on Sunday. I'll give you my final pick.
Oh, okay. We'll leave it at that with you, Nick. Appreciate you, man. Be well. Thank you so much, man.
Thanks, LA.
All right. Nick Anastos from Anastos Media and UMass Lowell play-by-play voice. Gary Gray, same thing to you. When you look at the totality of Kobe Bryant on and off the court, the man, the family man, which, of course, when people have a chance to vote, when they have the opportunity to vote, and they do that, they make their decisions based on whatever, but based on what you feel or based on your criteria, where you put Kobe in NBA history, and is he the greatest Laker?
No, he's not the greatest Laker. I'll go backwards. He's the third best Laker behind Kareem, Ezekiel, Ashley, Magic, and Kareem. 1, 2, and then Kobe 3, and Shaq is 4. That's my four Lakers. As far as life, look, the man was the hardest working basketball player I've ever known. This guy ate, drank, and slept basketball. He can teach, and I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to be watching the ball brothers or the ball kids, because they were under his tutelage with the ball kids. Now, if the ball kids come out to be great basketball players, I'm going to go right back to Kobe, because he was the one teaching them. So, the man was a basketball genius.
Yeah, I guess, Orlando, same question to you in terms of where does Kobe stand? Again, Gary kind of alluded to as far as LeBron passing him offensively. So, he's still in the top 5 in terms of scoring. And one of the things he prided himself in emulating Jordan was being great on the defensive end. And I thought he accomplished that too. Having said that, is he the greatest Laker, or do you put or I should say, and do you put him in the top 5 greatest players of all time?
Ooh. Is the Bean the greatest Laker? Ugh. If you had to put a gun to my head right now, what he did winning the 2 championships post-Shaq, and he did it with, I mean, they were talented, but they weren't as talented. Magic never won without Kareem. So even old man Kareem was still running the floor with Magic. So you got to kind of take that away from Magic. But although Magic got this Lakers team to the finals in '91 and lost to Michael, but his career was cut short. So I can easily argue, but I guess I'm going to stick with my Philly sake and my homerism right now and be in the moment and say he is the greatest Laker right now, followed by Kareem, followed by Magic, and give or take, and that could easily be switched up. Is he in the top 5? You know, Wilt's my number one.
Which is hard for you to say that he's in the top 5 if you're contemplating he's even in the top 3 of Laker lore, let alone NBA lore.
But I say my top 5 is Wilt, Oscar, Michael, Kareem, and then you have is Kobe better than Magic? And there is question. I mean, listen, Kobe had the work ethic that Magic didn't have, but he had those extra years, so that's the advantage he has over Magic. You know, Magic's career was stunted early, and he stopped playing productive basketball at that early age, at being 31. So, great question. Definitely a great question. Is he top 5? He could be. I will say this, with LeBron passing him the other day in Philly, and it's such a shame because I so wanted to come and talk today about how the Lakers showed no heart and what happened Saturday night at the Wells Fargo Center. I was completely disgusted with the Lakers product with all those big men, but that's another time. I guess we'll not talk about that. But I lost a little respect for LeBron this week in LA. I really did. He passed Kobe, but I lost respect for him. That I thought that they should have mopped the floor with the Sixers. So that guy right there, he's struggling to stay within my top 10. LeBron, that is.
That's interesting. You can elaborate on that real quick if you want in terms of LeBron and you lost respect. Philly won the game, if I'm not mistaken, but LeBron passed Kobe.
LeBron passed Kobe, and then Philly won the game. The Sixers won the game. Brett Brown tried his very best to give the game back to the Lakers with his substitution and everything else. Yeah, with his substitutions in the third quarter, because the Sixers came out. Remember that in the second half, they came out and they went up 22 on the Lakers. And then Brett Brown made some substitutions that allowed the Lakers to get in there and started to come back. But I thought the Lakers really showed themselves to be weak because the Sixers had no height inside. And it was just basically they got outwilled and outworked. And that was a gutless team. So for Frank Vogel as the head coach, for Jason Kidd as the assistant head coach, who's my man from the Sixers that's on the bench? Number 9. Who's the head coach?
Lionel Hollins.
Lionel Hollins, right? Lionel Hollins, number 9. I'm thinking of the Sixers. Lionel Hollins is assistant coach.
LeBron mad about Lionel Hollins. I love Lionel Hollins, but go ahead. Anyway.
Yeah,
I love Lionel.
I thought that performance was hideous by the Lakers, and I what's going to further hurt LeBron is the loss of Kobe, and so all the Kobeyites who didn't like LeBron coming to LA are going to really jump on his ass in the springtime when the Lakers lose, because they will lose in the second round of the Western Conference playoffs.
Well,
they're not better than Utah, and they can't beat the Clippers.
Well, we'll see how that works out.
Hey, LA, real quick though, we don't talk about the Jazz, which obviously that name should have stayed in New Orleans, but they're playing the best ball outside of Milwaukee in the entire league, and no one's talking about them.
Well, we did mention that last week. You didn't get a chance to get on, but we did talk about Utah and Denver and what'll happen with the two teams in Los Angeles. He mentioned Lionel Hollins, and certainly I'm a Sixer fan to the end. But to the point of what he was saying about the Lakers, this could be a teachable moment. I'm not a big Vogel fan for the Lakers. I'm certainly not a fan of the Sixer coach either. But having said that, this is a moment, and we've seen this, with sports situations where they would have won one for the Gipper, if you will. This has it has it written all over for the Lakers to do so. And don't forget the Clippers, who Doc Rivers really, really, truly, and continues to take the Kobe loss really personal. So we don't know what happens. But here's the point. I don't know how Kobe. I don't know how Kobe finishes third on Laker lore. When again, in my opinion, I'm not taking anything away from Magic, who had a triple double and dominated, Darryl Dawkins and my Sixers. But hey, he didn't have Jamal Wilkes and James Worthy and a very good Bob McAdoo and then Cooper and all these Rambis and all these guys. He didn't have all that.
Yeah, but he also, LA, if you're going to look at it full picture, he had Shaq and didn't want him.
Right, but I'm saying my point is that.
But I'm just saying.
No. I'm not saying. No, but you're saying something different. You're not. No, you are. Yes, you are. Because I'm not saying. No, it's not the same thing. Because Magic didn't ask Kareem to be traded or whatever. I get the whole Kobe Shaq thing. What my point is, when Kobe was winning his titles, he didn't have the arsenal that Magic had. Period. It's no question that he had the same talent. He never had the same talent.
And that was his own doing.
Yeah, but Shaq, you take away Shaq, you take away Kareem.
That was
right.
His own doing.
Own doing is one person, T.
But he's one of the dominant centers in the game.
Right. But Magic had. Okay, so let's go down. Okay, so let's do this. Let's go down a little. Let's go. Hold on. So if you're gonna go Magic and Kobe, okay, Magic had Kareem, Kobe had Shaq. All right, so let's go from there. Where's Cooper? Where's Wilkes? Where's Bob McAdoo? Right, you can complain that he didn't want Shaq, and I'll agree with you. My point is, who did he have after Shaq? Who?
Well, I'm not finished. I haven't answered your question yet. Magic got to the finals with Vlade Divac. He got to the finals with Eldon Campbell. Okay? So
Did he win?
Yeah, he got there. And Kobe.
Did he win?
No, but Kobe also lost to Detroit.
That washes out the Kareem Shaq thing. Then they both washed out. Neither one of them won with sub players. So that washes it out. He had Shaq. He had Kareem. They both were Hall of Fame.
But see, here's the thing. He could have had Shaq his whole career, but he chose not to.
Okay, but your assumption is that if he had Shaq, they were going to win more titles. That's your assumption.
Well,
With one
because
that's
you're
one
trying
other
to
player.
say-
One
because
other
you're
player
trying
was
to
going to
say
make the
because
difference.
you're- No,
No, you can't make that assumption, T. You can't make that assumption.
But you can't make the assumption that he was worse without him, too.
But
You can't have it both ways.
what are you talking about? What are you
both
talking about?
ways.
How do
You can't have it
it
both
doesn't
ways,
go
man.
both ways.
You can't have
Magic
it
had
both
all.
ways.
How many Hall of Famers? All right, let's break it down like this. How many Hall of Famers did Magic have and Kobe have in terms of their players? All right, we can go Shaq. Name another one that Kobe had.
At Byron,
All right, and then let's go to Magic. Let's go to Magic.
You're gonna let me? So you're not gonna let me finish what I'm saying? I guess,
I'm just saying, you going to are you denying that Magic had an all-star squad?
But see, here's the thing: when you let when you have one of the dominant offensive players in the history of the game, and you say you don't want him, and then you want me to feel like, oh, well, he didn't have those guys. Well, maybe if he had swallowed his ego a little bit and played with him together, you saw what they did when they were playing together. I mean, that's you have to take both sides with it. That's all I'm saying.
Right, but circumstances happen. Right, but T, I'm gonna go to Gary. But T, circumstances happen. Troy Aikman,
that's not
Emmett
a
Smith.
circumstance.
Let me finish.
That's not a circumstance. Kareem retired. Kareem retired.
Troy Aikman.
Was
Troy
Aikman.
Troy Aikman. Okay. Troy Aikman, Emmett Smith, and Michael Irvin won 3 titles. Did they win more and they were still together? Why didn't they win more? Because the owner messed that whole situation. Circumstances happen in your career. My point is that he didn't have all the all-stars.
But when you're the orchestrator of those, conditions, doesn't it say something as well?
Ifs and buts and Marys and nuts, the world be a perfect place. I don't get that. I don't understand that point.
This is the thing. Kobe wanted it his way, right? That was part of the problem, right? Shaq would stay there if Kobe didn't want it his way. Kobe wanted to be captain, general, everything else.
That's right.
Look,
I agree with that.
I totally agree. It's a team sport. I got to win by a team. Look,
but guess what?
Winners.
But double G. Right, but double G. But
right?
double G, guess what? Shaq left and Kobe won 2 titles after that.
Okay.
Let me finish my thought. Shaq didn't die in a helicopter. I'm talking about Kobe, right? So Kobe won 2 titles after Shaq. How many titles did Magic win after Kareem, after Jamal Wills, after Bob McAdoo and everything? Enough said. How many titles did Magic win after the Superstars? And how many titles did Kobe win with AC Green? He didn't even win that with AC Green. I mean, how many titles did he win with no superstars? After Shaq left, he won 2 titles. Can you say the same thing about Magic?
I still think Magic's the better overall player, plain and simple.
Okay, and that's fine. But I'm asking the greatest Laker. How many titles did Magic win without all the help that he had?
So you're discounting what Magic's impact?
I'm asking you. No, I didn't ask about impact or anything. I asked you how many titles did he win after he didn't. Kobe, what you made? Hold on, Tony.
Does that make Kobe better?
You made the point of if Kobe didn't run Shaq out of town, they would have won titles. Guess what? When he ran him out of town, he won titles. He won.
He would have won more.
Okay, he would have won more.
He would have won more.
He could have won more. We could debate that.
I'm this way. I'm not going to feel sorry for Kobe because he let one of the most dominant scoring guys go, and he's so, you know. See, that's where I lost it to a certain extent with Kobe. And again, this is not trying to beat up the dead or anything like that. It's just a thing of I think for a lot of folks, because after he won that first title after Shaq left, he said, I got more titles than Shaq. And plain and simple, that was like being a little petulant child.
Okay,
and
but
now, let me finish. Now, yes, they did, make up after all of that and everything. But my thing is, Magic Johnson, in his way, without a Magic Johnson, you don't have a Kobe Bryant. Magic Johnson transcended the game in the sense of being a 6'9" guard that put it this way. I'll just make this comparison in a sense with Magic, and I've always made this comparison. When Larry had to get his first title, he had to go through Magic. When Isaiah had to get his first title, he had to go through Magic. When Michael Jordan had to get his first title, he had to go through Magic. When Hakeem and Moses got their first title, they had to go through Magic. Now Magic's got his 5 rings, just like Kobe's got his 5 rings. Put a gun to my head, I still think Magic had the better career. Now you can talk about he didn't have the same players that Kobe had, but Kobe put himself in that situation by letting Shaq go. That's my point.
But the point is that you're bringing up stuff that I'm not talking about. Magic's not dead. Shaq is not dead. Kobe's dead.
Let me finish. It's not about being dead. We're talking about basketball. We're talking basketball.
I let you talk, T. The question to you was, who is the greatest Laker and why? It wasn't about all the. It wasn't about. It wasn't about. Okay, it wasn't. Okay, right. Right, you're saying it. Fine, but the point was, it wasn't about. It wasn't about why Kobe let Shaq go and all that. It was who's the greatest Laker and why. And I'm telling you that.
Magic Johnson.
And you say Magic, and that's fine. And that's fine. And I think it was Kobe because Kobe did it without great players. Magic did it with great players. So we can agree to disagree. But it has nothing to do with anything else that I didn't ask you what color the sky was. I asked you who's the greatest Laker. That's what I asked.
If you're gonna factor in everything, you got to factor in the good and the bad.
Okay, but Kobe was a personality. Look, Kobe Bryant was one of the greatest players I ever seen, but because of his arrogance in the locker room, it caused problems.
Okay, but again, Gary, you're talking about stuff that has nothing to do with the question. Y'all talking about, okay, he could have won more titles if he wasn't arrogant. I didn't ask you that. I asked you who was the greatest Laker based on what. You asked him he could have won 10 titles or whatever. I didn't ask you about titles. I asked you based on his career and Magic and Kareem, who were brought up, who's the greatest and why. Not because he decided that he didn't want to play with Shaq. That plays into how many titles. He already had 5. We already know he got 5. 3 with Shaq, 2 on his own. We already know that. We're not talking about how many he could have won. I asked you who's the greatest Laker based on whatever. Not about Magic or Kobe and their arrogance or lack thereof or who they liked or no liked. I asked you based on their merits of their play and the talent they had around them. Who was the greatest Laker? That's it. If you don't think those outside forces don't have a factor in this, then you're not being true to your question. I'm being very true to my question because if Kobe decided that he didn't want to play with Shaq and decided that I'm going to do it on my own, he actually proved he can do it on his own. And I will debate.
Make him a better player.
Well,
It doesn't make him a better player.
Okay, you can say that, but I'm
Still
saying
doesn't
that
make him a better player.
when you walking on the floor from Michigan State and you got future Hall of Famers playing with you, I think that makes a difference too. I'm not taking this.
There's a difference.